Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. The NBA trade deadline rapidly approaches. Any moves that the Utah Jazz or other teams around the NBA want to make have to be completed before the end of the show today. We are 2 hours away from the deadline. Gordy Chiesa is going to join us here in studio for one of those 2 hours. He'll be here from 11:30 to 12:30. Lots to talk about. Already plenty of movement in the NBA. I mean, we talked on the show yesterday about the fact that there would be, it seemed like, superstar movement. Guys that were big-time names, whether they were aging or not, moving on. Now, nothing was going to overshadow the behemoth, the juggernaut, the massive trade between the Mavs and the Lakers, and we're still hearing the fallout from that. We're still getting more insight on how that all came together, and probably more importantly, the opinions of the players involved in that trade. 877-353-0700. My question for you now is, have the Jazz done enough? Knowing what the goals are at this moment, you've basically stockpiled a bunch of second-round draft picks. You got Dennis Schroeder in the building, and nothing that is going to change your future, but that wasn't the expectation. The expectation is that the future changing would be done in this upcoming draft. Now, do you need to offload some of the veteran talent that you have in order to get that draft position? We'll get a tanking update on the show today that might suggest that could be the case. You might need to actually lighten your talent load even more. But have your Utah Jazz impressed you in this trade deadline? Do you like the way that they've kind of laid back and seen what everyone else is doing? They were a fascinating little asterisk aside to that Luka and AD trade. But beyond that, beyond being facilitators for everyone else in the NBA to make splashes, the Jazz have not made a splash. And I don't think that we really expected them to until draft time. And that's, of course, a hopeful proposition because you still have to go through the draft lottery process, and you're just trying to improve your odds there. As we await the approaching NBA trade deadline, we also look to the Super Bowl this coming weekend. Super Bowl Sunday is just a couple of days away. We've probably covered about every angle of this game, but we haven't talked with everyone about it. We're still going to talk with Mike Yam this week. Eric Weddle is going to join us on the show today at his typical time, 12:30 for all of you keeping track, by the way. And we're just going to play that trade. We're going to try to I'm going to try to be nimble with the trade stuff because, I've got my notes here. I've got a rough show outline here. I've got some Super Bowl things I want to bring up. And boom. You like that, James? Boom. A trade could drop.
Yeah. Boom. We were talking off air about because Mark Sanchez was dropping the boom every time, every few seconds during his interview with DP. Just love that John Madden. That's one of his contributions to the game. The boom. But yeah, I will be. Don't you worry too. In the producer's room here, I am refreshing Sham's Twitter feed every 5 seconds.
Are you sure it's the real Shams?
I've got the yes.
Okay.
Real Shams. He's got the verified blue check, right? So that means it's real.
Anyone can have that now.
Oh,
all you have to do
right.
Is buy that.
That's right.
You got to get Shams is big enough. Some of these accounts are important enough that they need to get the gold check. Gold check that exists for the official teams. So that you're actually talking to the real Utah Jazz, you're talking to the real San Francisco 49ers.
So you're saying that there should be a system, a symbol that says this is the actual person, not just someone using their name. Interesting. It's almost like we had that before on Twitter.
Well, but then they wanted to monetize verification.
Yeah.
I actually, I've been without my official blue check for several months now. I don't know, a year now. Hasn't changed anything.
Oh.
Nobody's trying to copy me. Nobody's trying to pretend they're me.
You're already big time.
There's no Sean O'Connell impersonators.
You haven't noticed that change in your reach. Your reach is less because you're already big time.
My follow and unfollow rate is has equalized to where I've got like no more followers than I had before, and I have no less than I had before. So we're just we're maintaining here.
Yeah.
On the old Twitter sphere.
But yes, I'm refreshing Sham's Twitter feed and making sure that I am up to date on all the trades, and I'll break in case you hadn't seen it with some breaking news of the trades that go down.
So Jimmy Butler is going to be a Golden State Warrior. The trade talks between the Miami Heat and the Phoenix Suns to potentially swap Kevin Durant, who seems to not be overly happy with Phoenix, and they appear to not be overly happy with him, although he said he's never asked for a trade from Phoenix. And Jimmy Butler very clearly didn't want to be in Miami anymore, and Phoenix was kind of the top destination for him. That fell apart, and instead, and the Jazz were part of this trade as well, instead, Jimmy Butler ends up with the Golden State Warriors, who needed something new, needed something different, needed something else if they're going to still try to keep that championship dynastic window open. And to me, I mean, this is going to be a really interesting fit. Can't wait to talk to Gordy Chiesa about it. Jimmy Butler, I've talked about this on the show earlier in the week. I don't know what category we put him in terms of like problem personality, difficult teammate, hard to work with, because it's always unfair to only look at someone through one particular lens or the lens of one particular situation and say, well, that's who he is and that's how he is. Maybe Jimmy Butler is a guy that when he gets on a team with Steve Kerr, who won championships as a player and coach, and with Steph Curry, who's a multiple-time MVP, one of the greats in the game, best shooter in the history of the game, and a guy who, by all accounts, is a really high-quality teammate, but a consummate professional. And maybe somehow Draymond has a positive effect. Also, I'm a Draymond hater straight up, so I don't know what kind of positive effect he will have, especially with the volatile personality. That I think it's fair to say that Jimmy Butler has shown us enough times that like he's a guy you got to talk to him the right way, you've got to approach him the right way. He needs to feel like he's respected, or there's going to be a problem here. Maybe him and Draymond already have that understanding because they've spent time together at All-Star Weekend and with Team USA basketball and things like that. Maybe they've already got a great relationship. But you look at this Jimmy Butler to the Golden State Warriors. I don't want to paint the wrong picture of Jimmy Butler because I truly don't know whether he's a guy who's hard to manage and hard to work with. We know that there are players in the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball that are just not like they're not super professional about things. Their personalities don't gel well with other people. They don't play nice with others, et cetera, et cetera. And those players you kind of have to put in a situation where it's all in or in the way. It's that you got to fall in line. You're going to work with us or you're just not going to be here. And Golden State, to me, does feel like that type of team. They felt more like that type of team before the whole Draymond Green punching people situation. But the best version of the Golden State Warriors is, I think, one of those places where you can kind of go as a player and fall in line, rehab your reputation a little bit, just kind of put your head down and work. And there's always going to be the bigger dog in the locker room than you, even though not from a literal standpoint. But Steph Curry gets to tell you what to do. He's a multiple-time MVP, multiple-time finals. Well, I guess he didn't win multiple finals MVPs, right?
The one finals MVP.
One finals MVP.
He's been awesome finals performer.
Yeah, but a multiple-time champion and one of the great players in NBA history. That guy can probably be like, look, dude, this is how we do it here. Utah football is this place. It has been this place for many people even before the transfer portal as we know it now was a thing. There were a lot of guys who had their struggles other places and got an opportunity at Utah because at that time it was very clear. It was an undoubtable, indisputable thing that you become us. We don't become you. if you show up here and we will give you an opportunity to do that, you're going to do it this way, and it's going to work out for you if you do it this way. But if you don't, sorry, man, we're just not going to hear from you. Nobody's going to see you. There were a lot of guys who were able to do that. And look, sometimes it only happened for a year. Tavion Thomas, unfortunately, was only able to do that for himself for a year, right? Josh Gordon was never able to do that. But Darren Carrington was able to come. He had a mess of a personal life at Oregon and came to Utah and had a phenomenal season and kind of finished things out on a positive note. I think you could make a case that, like Harvey Longy was in that situation. There's a bunch of people who have showed up at the University of Utah with baggage, and it's kind of like, you know what? Never mind the baggage. Leave it at the door. Start doing it this way, and everything's going to work out a little bit better. In the NBA, I visualize a couple of teams as those types of teams, and the Golden State Warriors are one of them. So whatever baggage, and that's probably the right word to put on the Jimmy Butler situation, because whether it's all his fault or whether it's somebody else's fault, there's definitely baggage there. The Golden State Warriors feel to me like a franchise where you leave the baggage at the door, you get the fresh start, you get the clean slate, and as long as you do things the way that organization historically or in recent history has done things, it's probably going to work out just fine. Now, does he fit in from a basketball X's and O's, actually like fill in the gaps talent standpoint for the Golden State Warriors to where they now become a Western Conference contender instead of a sort of a bubble team? We'll find out. But from a baggage standpoint, that's what I've settled on. From a baggage standpoint, I don't think there is a better situation that Jimmy Butler could have found himself in where you can now play distraction-free basketball. When you get to a place like Golden State, people say, all right, that's crazy how that worked out in Miami, huh? Too bad you guys didn't get along. Now you're with a recent dynasty team.
Yeah, and I would categorize Jimmy Butler as a guy who gets discontent with whatever his situation's in after a few years, whether that's out of boredom, whether that's someone disrespected me a little bit and I'm going crazy about it. We've seen that happen now at just about every one of his stops in the NBA. So he's a guy who gets somewhat easily discontented. I will hearken us back to, remember the way people talked about Jim Harbaugh pre-Michigan?
I'm just happy you're using discontent and hearken in the same sentence. But yes,
yeah.
Keep going.
I got the dictionary open here, OC.
Okay.
And a thesaurus. Anyway, remember the way that we talked about Jim Harbaugh, or people talked about Jim Harbaugh pre-Michigan? They talked about, he's a guy who can only stand to be at a place for maybe 3-4 years at a time, and then he starts intentionally or unintentionally grading on people, and he gets himself shown the door almost on purpose, right?
Yeah.
That was what a lot of the narrative was around him at the end of his 49ers stint, which was wildly successful, and it didn't record-wise, the team didn't fall apart. They were 8-8 and missed the playoffs his last year, the only year, but never a losing season with the Niners. But the story was people couldn't stand him in the organization, whether it was players or other people in charge, and so a separation was needed. He took a couple years off, was hired at his alma mater in Michigan, goes on a really successful run, especially at the end, winning a national championship, and all of a sudden no one's talking about Jim Harbaugh as a guy who can only stand to be in a place for 3 or 4 years. I feel like it's a similar situation with Jimmy Butler, except that Jimmy's never gotten to the point where we can't stop talking about that, because we thought Miami was the place. We thought Miami was his paradise. Miami was the place he always wanted to be, supposedly, and even with the Miami Heat, where 2 years removed from an unlikely finals run, and the year before that a conference finals, bubble final, another unlikely finals run, he still seemed to orchestrate his own exit. So I don't know if Jimmy Butler will ever be completely content in whatever place he's in. But I think that's the baggage. How we categorize the baggage is that he just starts to self-sabotage for whatever reason.
I think that's a good way to put it. I think being a malcontent or easily discontented is probably a good way to say it without, because you're not really attacking character, and I never wanted to do that with people I don't know. But again, I keep circling back to, all right, well, what franchise out there has shown us over the years that they're able to manage conflicting personalities pretty successfully? They're able to handle guys that maybe in another context actually wouldn't get along that well. And the Warriors have done a better job than most. Now,
they seem to be
the outlier there, of course, is that whole actual fistfight situation.
Yeah. That pretty much broke up the dynasty, right? And we'll see if this trade restarts the dynasty a little bit. But yeah, the Warriors are better, are that team right now. Historically, I would say any Phil Jackson team. He's those Phil Jackson Bulls and the Phil Jackson Lakers. He was probably the best in NBA history at managing personalities, whether they're just egotistical star players who can't get along with anybody because they can't get out of their own way, or Dennis Rodman and Ron Artest.
Let me tell you something. Phil Jackson needs to be the president of the United States. Right. I say this tongue-in-cheek sometimes, but when you think about, especially we get the hindsight, right? He found a way to, at their peak of athleticism, of virility, of testosterone, he found a way to get guys like Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, and Michael Jordan to coexist, right? Ron Artest and Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, and especially with the Bulls, we get the hindsight perspective now. They all, Scottie Pippen hates Michael Jordan now.
Yeah.
Hates him.
Steve Kerr tells the story on The Last Dance of when he got punched in the face by Michael Jordan.
That's right. And somehow Phil Jackson and his weird, I'm a super tall basketball hippie, Zen master kind of a situation, he got all those guys to work together successfully. Now, can Kerr do it with this bunch? We will see. The Utah Jazz, I don't think have that volatile of a mix in their locker room at this exact moment. But it is something.
Maybe never have. But yeah.
If they ever have, I don't know. The teams that I can think, obviously the John and Carl and Jeff Hornacek and Brian Russell and Greg Ostertag, those are some big personality type guys. Carl's and Greg Ostertag in particular, right?
There was some tension between those two for sure.
But
Gordy
look, there's
can
a
tell
certain,
us about that.
There's a certain pecking order. And with Jerry Sloan at the top of that thing, and those guys having a relatively old school mentality about how a coach can talk to them and they can talk to a coach and things like that, it works out just fine for the Utah Jazz. The modern NBA is a little bit different. The way that Steve Kerr is going to have to go about getting people to coexist is going to be a lot different than what Jerry Sloan used, and probably even than what Phil Jackson used, although I would lean more towards the Phil Jackson school of thought when we're talking about Steve Kerr, because that's the example he followed, and it's also seemingly their personality types. But at some point, if you're the Utah Jazz, you have to be prepared also for what is our contingency plan if and when we have some conflicting personalities in the room, because if Miami can't keep it together, there's probably no better place on planet Earth to be a young, rich professional athlete than Miami, Florida. Have you been to Miami? Have you walked down the boardwalk or the street in Miami? If you are a young, wealthy, prominent individual in Miami, there's a lot of reasons you would want to stay in a town like that. Salt Lake City is not built the same way, right? So these are all things that would have to come into consideration.
How diplomatic of you. With that statement. Yeah, and Gordy's going to give us tons of insight on this for sure, about just how well equipped Steve Kerr and the Golden State Warriors seem to be to bring in a pretty volatile personality at times when he's decided that he doesn't like a place. And Jimmy Butler, until he's decided that he doesn't like a place, he actually has shown that he can be, although a very demanding teammate and kind of talk to you harshly kind of teammate. He can show that he can buy in, right? But we've never seen him with a guy as volatile as Draymond Green. And you were starting to talk about that. We'll see if those two can coexist, because Draymond Green is in the Dennis Rodman, Ron Artest type box that's just, you watch him sometimes, you see what he does, and you go, that guy is legitimately insane.
He's an insane person, but he's also the kind of insane person that, like, if he's your insane,
yes,
you're like, that's our crazy guy.
And
everyone loves a crazy guy as long as his craziness benefits us. Now, I actually think Steph Curry has grown fatigued of that Draymond craziness, or he was fatigued of it at some point, and I think they've hashed that out, because Draymond also understands the pecking order with that organization, and it's always going to be, at least for the foreseeable future, Steph Curry, soft-spoken-ish, but at the top, right? So how does that work with Jimmy Butler? The other thing about this trade is that it kind of leaves Kevin Durant out in the dark. He doesn't maybe want to be in Phoenix, or Phoenix doesn't want him to be there, but we know how expensive he is. We know that the last couple seasons we've seen of him in Phoenix, even though he's incredibly productive, he hasn't been the thing that pushes him over the hump. So if you're this contending team or this bubble team, you're maybe not like, yeah, I'll give up what I have to give up in a short-term and long-term perspective to try and get Kevin Durant here. So now he's, I guess, just going to stick around in Phoenix. We have another hour and 40 minutes to figure that out, I suppose. And the other thing I wanted to ask James, before Gordy's going to join us here in about 8 minutes, we look at some of these guys, and Steph Curry comes to mind immediately, who I cannot picture in another uniform, right? And there's no evidence that Steph's ever going to be in another uniform. He has expressed that. The Warriors have expressed that. I think he's probably going to retire a Golden State Warrior. Now, we'll see how this Jimmy Butler thing works out, because it can go south really quickly. And we talked on the show yesterday about how Kevin Durant and Chris Paul, those guys are kind of the opposite end of that spectrum. They'll go where the money's at. They'll go where they think they can win. In the NBA and anywhere else, James, the current professional athlete, the guy who's active now and still at least close enough to their prime, that you think he's going to be where he's at, or you could go with an WNBA player or something. He or she is at a professional athlete that is going to be a one uniform kind of person.
First one that comes to mind is Patrick Mahomes.
Mahomes,
he's got another 12 years left on the deal, so that helps. He's locked down. I felt
the same way about Patrick Mahomes, and then I was like, but also I felt the same way about Joe Montana, who ended up going and playing for
Brady,
the Kansas City Chiefs, and Brady's the most obvious example of this to me. It's like Tom Brady, New England, Boston royalty, all those championships, establishes himself as the greatest of all time over a 2-decade span in one place, after that team was the team that took a flyer on him late in the draft, right? And then he's just like, I'm going to Tampa. And you're like, whoa. So, I mean,
yeah. So anything can happen, but I would still say Mahomes probably is the first that comes to mind.
Okay. Steph Curry for me is one that's way up there.
Steph's probably the NBA one. I don't know if there's another NBA one. I would have said maybe Luka Doncic with the Mavericks, because he seemed to really like it there. And when it comes to, we've seen it over and over again when it comes to Europeans and and foreign players, they don't necessarily chase the big city life that American players do. And Dallas is certainly a big city, but it's not the New York big city type thing. It's not the LA Tinseltown type thing. So I didn't I didn't envision him wanting to leave in free agency. I certainly didn't envision the Mavericks wanting to trade him. So I probably would have went out on the limb and said Luka might have been that guy
What about
before this
Jokic?
shocking trade.
What about Joker?
I could see the Joker too. Yeah. Now that you bring that up,
he doesn't even want to be in the United States.
No, he wants to be with his horses in Serbia.
The funniest
half the time.
I will remember till the day I die how hilarious it was that people are just like, yeah, we got the parade next week. And he's just like, no, because he wanted to get on a plane and go home to Serbia.
When is parade?
Just was so bothered.
So good.
So put off by the idea that he was going to have to wait 2 more days to go back to his home country. And you know what? More power to him.
Yeah, Jokic and Steph are probably the two.
I've never
in
been
the league
to
right
Serbia.
now.
I don't know what Serbia is actually like, but the lizard brain tells me that Serbia is probably more like Denver than it is a lot of other NBA cities. Right? Yeah. So I don't know.
It might be. I've been in a country that borders Serbia, but I can't tell you about Serbia.
In any case, stew on that. 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports. The current professional athlete that you can see being a one-stop, one-shop, one-uniform type of individual. NBA, Major League Baseball, NFL, NHL. I think Ovechkin's probably going to be a one-uniform guy.
Yeah, Ovi.
I mean,
that's a good one. Sidney Crosby.
and Ovi. It's more common, I think, in the NHL.
Yeah.
In any case, throw them at me at Real OC Sports and at 877-353-0700 on our Dish Pros text line as a trade deadline rapidly approaches in the NBA. And some guys might be wearing the second uniform. Some guys might be wearing the 5th uniform of their NBA careers. Show today and every day is brought to you by our good friends at Les Schwab Tires. Tires, wheels, accessories, they've got it all for whatever it is you drive. The pros there will get the job done right the first time. When you go to Les Schwab, tell them OC sent you. Before we take a break and come back with Gordy Chiesa, we need a leaderboard update. Our PGA leaderboard update is brought to you by Uinta Golf. The new TaylorMade QI35 woods are the 4th generation of carbon wood technology, a driver that unlocks a whole new level of distance, available now at Uinta Golf. Phoenix Open PGA Tour leaderboard update, James Peterson.
If I'm not mistaken, this is the big party, Waste Management Phoenix Open that's usually right before the Super Bowl. So one of the more fun tournaments on tour. Christian Bezuidenhout, South African, is your leader right now, 5 under. He's 1 shot ahead of Rasmus Højgaard, who is 4 under. And then some of the bigger names coming in, tied for 3rd at 3 under, guys like Justin Thomas in one of those. Jordan Spieth at 2 under, 3 shots off the lead in 9th. Hideki Matsuyama also tied for 9th at 2 under. Not seeing Tony Finau on the list of the field. If he's actually playing and I just missed it, let us know. But I don't see Tony Finau as a participant. We'll check on that later. We'll have another one of these before the show ends. That's your PGA Tour leaderboard update brought to you by Uinta Golf.
Take a quick one here. We've got Gordy Chiesa and his NBA expertise for the next hour. So much to talk about as the trade deadline rapidly approaches. The Utah Jazz have made some moves. Nothing crazy yet. Maybe nothing crazy before 1 o'clock. We'll see. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
drives inside. Draymond. Blocked! Kessler for the third time. The bounce out. Keontae. The triple. Got it! Got it!
Thrilling game last night for the Utah Jazz, who found a way to win as the trade deadline approaches. That was Keontae George on a go-ahead three in the final minute. 131-128 is the final. Jazz over the Golden State Warriors, who were active last night in the old trade situation. That sound courtesy of our friends at Smith Entertainment Group. Craig Bolerjack on the call. 26 points off the bench for Keontae George, who continues to flash every now and again. Joining me now in studio for the next hour to talk about all things NBA, our guru himself, Gordy Chiesa. Gordy, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing good, Sean. Thank you.
So we'll start with the highlight. We'll start with the Utah Jazz win. A lot of grit, a lot of determination displayed. Always good to see a great bench contribution like those 26 points from Keontae George. What stuck out for you in that win over the Warriors?
There was a thrilling game last night. What happened stuck out was that the Jazz scored 44 points in the fourth quarter. And the thing about it is that they scored on 10 straight possessions. So the Warriors, up to that point, were able to control the pace of the game. But in the last 3 minutes, the Jazz went into a high gear. Thoroughly impressed by Isaiah Collier. This guy was sensational, showing his poise of getting 20 points and 11 assists and only one turnover. And that was a huge part of it. So historically, Isaiah Collier and Trey Burke are the only players in Jazz history to have multiple 20-point game and 10 assists during their rookie season. And so Collier could be the Jazz point guard of the future. It's interesting with Keontae George, who was playing point, now plays off the ball, and he's flourishing in that role. He was incredible last night as far as in that fourth quarter. He made that great shot to put him up one the last 26 seconds, and it's how he's playing. He's playing with a lot of confidence, and that's what you want. Did you want to see him do? I call it really his instant offense, energy spark plug. 26 points in 31 minutes, 8 for 13 last night, 4 for 8 from threes, and 6 assists, and only one turnover. So he had it rolling, and that's good for his confidence.
James, did you just whisper in my ear that there's a Suns trade? Is KD finally on the move?
Not quite. It
Not
is
quite.
not involve Kevin Durant.
Okay.
Yusuf Nurkic, who has been rumored to be, they've been trying to move away from him,
All right.
is on his way out officially. He and they're sending Nurkic and a 2026 first-round pick to the Charlotte Hornets for Cody Martin, and I'm going to butcher the next guy's name, Vasilije Micic, and a 2026 second-round pick, according to Shams. So not Caleb Martin, who got famous from those Heat playoff runs. His twin brother, Cody Martin, headed to Phoenix for Yusuf Nurkic, some draft picks involved.
Yusuf Nurkic to Charlotte?
To Charlotte. They just lost.
And Cody Martin to the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, so
And some draft picks.
they
All right.
Charlotte just traded away their young starting center, Mark Williams. So
So
maybe
with that trade right there, so that's more
maybe
house
they think that's
cleaning
a
by the
replacement.
Phoenix Suns. So it wasn't working out with Yusuf Nurkic, so they made that trade to get Cody Martin, get another defensive player with them, which they need right now. So the Suns, it's not over yet. A lot of times, the last minute, there's an unbelievable flurry that's going on. But I do know this, though, that the winner of so far the most impactful off season as far as in the trading deadline is definitely the L.A. Lakers. Think about showing the Lakers what they did, led by the general manager, Rob Pelinka. They traded for Luka Doncic. They added Mark Williams, who's from the Charlotte Hornets, who's absolutely a jumping jack, 7'2". He has the longest wingspan in the NBA, even more than Victor Wembanyama. So he's only 23 years young. He's a shot blocker, floor runner. They added him, and that's what the Lakers need. They need somebody that can play inside of as far as a presence. Also, they added Maxi Kleber via the Mavs, Markieff Morris via the Mavs, and also earlier, let's not forget, they added Dorian Finney-Smith from the Nets and Shake Milton from the Nets. So the Lakers, they needed help dramatically, and they got it. So we shall see as they go forward now after the trade deadline. Lakers are the 5th seed. They're 29-19, and now they got these 5 players that can add to their group right now, and we think that they can go forward.
Mark Williams to the Lakers. They've been looking for a center, especially since you lose someone like AD, who he himself always disputed that he was a 5. He wanted to be like the stretch 4, right? So now you've got more of a true center. Is that going to help the project of getting LeBron and Luka to gel? I mean, AD is a great player, but was that the right system, the right role for him necessarily, the way that team was shaping out this year? And now it's back more to the traditional offensive lineup for the Lakers.
Yeah, very much. So add to that. So now they got a big guy that can Anthony Davis is tremendous talent. He's 32 years old, and so the window is shortened for the Lakers. So they added a guy that's 23 years old that his upside is absolutely potential-wise, and he's a better fit because he's more of a screener and a roller. So he's going to give daylight to Luka Doncic and LeBron James and Austin Reeves when he sets that pick and roll. He's not going to demand the ball as far as scoring. So he's what we call a recipient, a basket maker, where he needs help as far as finishing, as far as lob passes. But he's such a great threat on the baseline. So he's gonna. It's the good fit for the Lakers. It's economically smart by them, and it gives them a guy that's dramatically younger to play with Luka. Again, there's the top dog there is LeBron James, absolutely. But Luka Doncic now is a close second, and by adding Mark Williams, they got a sidekick to Luka that can finish in the lane.
Do you like Dalton Connect, who they sent away?
I do, absolutely. So like any trade, you have to subtract to add, and so Dalton Connect is this tremendous range shooter, catch and fire. Also, he got some bounce to his game, and so he was traded to the Charlotte Hornets, and the Hornets, they're starting over. Their record right now, the Hornets, they're 12-16. They're hoping to be in either 1, 2, or 3 in the draft lottery to have a chance to get those top players that we all know about. And so Connect is the guy that's going to add to their group, and they think that, meaning the Charlotte Hornets, that they think that they can build around those guys. And so it's an interesting, they had to do that tremendously, but it's interesting how they did it, though. And they did it by adding a shooter. So with Dalton Connect, Cam Reddish goes to the Hornets. And so now they start basically LaMelo Ball's an all-star, Josh Green, Dalton Connect, Brandon Miller, and now they're trying to add to as far as play Miles Bridges at center. So they're retooling right now, but I do think that it was a smart move by them.
The blockbuster that we've already talked about, the Luka AD trade, followed up with it's not the same level of blockbuster trade, but anytime you get someone of Jimmy Butler's caliber to move on from a situation where he's unhappy and end up with a place where not so long ago they were not only competing for but winning multiple NBA championships. Butler to the Warriors. We started the show talking about this. It is a big move. I don't know if it's as landscape changing as Luka being relocated because of the age difference, obviously. But will this experiment in San Francisco work?
Yes, it will. And the reason why, because Butler's going there knowing that the top dog is definitely Stephen Curry, but he needs help. He's showing slightly his age, and rightfully so. He's 36 and is unbelievable heavy lifting. Now, there was a concern at Miami where he didn't want to be there. So he goes to the the Warriors. He gets a new lease. His head's on straight. Should be. They gave him the extension as of yesterday, the 2-year extension, $111 million a year, as far as total for the 2 years. So he has this year plus 2 more through the 26-27 season, and it's going to help them as far as the Warriors. It should fit. he's more defensive-minded, where he doesn't need the ball to score. He scores off movement, and it's going to help Steph Curry. So in their lineup right now, should be Steph Curry, Buddy Hield, Jimmy Butler, Jonathan Kuminga, and Draymond Green. That should be their starting lineup. And so in a playoff game, so now their goal right now is to try to be the 6th seed, the most immediate goal. But so can they do it? The answer is they have to pick it up right now, but it's possible. I think it's a smart deal. It makes sense. It was messy, as always, Sean. It was messy. In the NBA ecosystem, it often gets messy. It was.
Who's going to play the 5 in that starting lineup you talked about?
Well, it will be Draymond Green as far as him being at 5 right now, and they have this young big guy that's helped him quit post, and so he'll be the backup right now. So Draymond will be the 5-man. Kuminga's hurt right now, and Kuminga's a 22-year-old lightning rod that's got talent. Now it's a very combustible group. Steve Kerr, the coach, has dealt with Draymond Green for a decade, so he's used to somewhat being around lightning rods.
Yes.
And so if anybody can do it, it could be him.
So Draymond and Jimmy Butler, those guys, are they going to be oil and water? Are they too similar personality-wise? Like because there's always the basketball conversation, but then there's the personality conflict conversation as well. And you have to, unfortunately, bring it up with Draymond and anyone who's going to be on this roster because he's a very outspoken guy. He's a pretty volatile guy. He's not shy about expressing his thoughts on other people's work habits, how other people fit into the system, etc. And Jimmy Butler, I don't know if we're accurately characterizing him, but in our first segment we were talking about, he's a guy who seems to he gets discontent more quickly than others, perhaps. Is that going to be an oil and water mix, oil and vinegar mix? Is that going to be something that works out for Steve Kerr and for Steph Curry?
It will work out. Let's not forget. Oh, by the way, they're 4-time champions.
Yeah.
So Jimmy Butler, when he's going there, they have it over him saying that this is the way we play, and it's been highly successful. Yes, we do need your help, and we want to embrace you. I think it's going to work out because he's defensive-minded, and in a playoff game, he's absolutely gritty. The Warriors, over the years, they were like a finesse team, and they've been highly successful because they shoot the ball so well. But now the last year or so, and again, rightfully so, they moved on from Klay Thompson. Steph is still an elite shooter, but there's signs of him slowing down. They need Kuminga to be what? This live wire. Jimmy Butler's going to give them some grit and score probably between 15, 18 without the ball. And Draymond's going to give them, as far as all-around defense, offense. So I think it's going to work.
That's Gordy Chiesa's voice. He's here in studio with us if you're watching on our YouTube channel. If you're not, you should be. 877-353-0700. You can always weigh in, ask questions, tell me what you want me to pick Gordy's brain about. We'll take a quick one here. Another trade has come down as the deadline approaches, an hour and 13 minutes away from the NBA trade deadline. Will the Jazz make another move? We'll talk about what they've done so far and give you the update on the latest trade. That's next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Almost forgot to remind all of you about the cash kickoff going on right now through ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Your chance to win $1,000 cash money. 508-777-1000. Text the word WAD, W-A-D, WAD, to 508-777-1000 for your chance to win $1,000 to pay the bills. 508-777-1000, WAD, W-A-D. Gordy Chiesa in studio with me as the trade deadline approaches, and as we were going to break, another trade came down. Gordy, who's moving?
The trade was the Atlanta Hawks acquired from the Cavaliers Karis LeVert and George Niang and draft picks. The Cleveland Cavaliers acquire from Atlanta Hawks DeAndre Hunter.
Okay.
And so it makes sense of both teams. Karis LeVert, George Niang. And remember, George Niang is a former Utah Jazz player. His nickname is very lovingly called the minivan. And that guy can shoot. And so the Atlanta gains a shooter and Karis LeVert with an expiring contract. And the Cavaliers, who are in first place in the East, they gained DeAndre Hunter, who's an all-around player, small, I'll call him a hybrid four, small forward stretch player where he can score the ball and he can defend. So it helps the Cavaliers. They think they're going to be a title contender. Right now they're in first place, the Cavaliers. They're 41-10, including 24-4 at home. It adds to the group right now. Smart trade.
Gordy, how difficult is it when you are having success, when you're a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers? They're 41-10. Second best record in the NBA right now, to make these moves because you don't want to upset the apple cart. Things are going pretty darn well, and even if you think, hey, you know what, we might need to add something else to really make a championship run, it feels to me like these sports teams, it's always kind of a delicate balance of personalities and minutes and all that stuff. So, yeah, teams that have obvious needs, of course you're going to be a player. How tough is it to be in a position of power, in a position of success, and be willing to pull a trigger on trades like this?
Well, a lot of it's based on economics and based on the fit. And so the Cavaliers, they feel that they have a championship-type team and that DeAndre Hunter is a better fit off the bench for them than George Niang, and they're willing to give up Karis LeVert. And the only reason why this happened because also the emergence of Ty Jerome. Ty Jerome's this guy that's played for them sensational. And he was, it's his sixth year. He was the 24th pick of the draft back in 2019. He was overseas. He was in the G League, but in the present tense, he's played well for them. So they think that he can replace Karis LeVert as an off-the-bench spark, and that DeAndre Hunter, whether you start him or not, use him off the bench, that he's going to, in a playoff game, he can defend. With the Cavs, they're just staring right at the Boston Celtics, and they're staring at the Knicks. So they think that DeAndre Hunter could slow down in a playoff series Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and that's how you have to think. Where can our guy guard the other team's main people in a situation to help us get through that? And so that's why they did that for. It's both short-term immediately and also long-term as far as economically.
Now's your chance to get tickets to the next home game. Text Utes to 33986 for a chance to win a pair of tickets. Next home game is Saturday, February 15th against Kansas. Tickets are available at utahtickets.com. Utes to 33986. Gordy, to finish out the hot lunch before we get into hour number 2, you've been around some crazy trade stories. You've been part of teams, part of this Utah Jazz organization when the news comes down. In the room with guys, at practice with guys, when they find out that they're being traded. Give me one.
Well, here's one with back in February 24th, 1994. So 31 years ago, where it was a snowy day in Salt Lake City, and the Jazz at that time practiced at Westminster College. How crazy is that? At Westminster. And so we go through practice, and there's been a lot of talk about trying to trade Jeff Malone, who's a 19-point scorer, was an effective two-guard, and did a lot of good things for the Jazz. So I remember Jeff Malone, when practice was over, we were shooting foul shots, and he said to me these interesting words: "Coach, are you guys going to trade me today?" And so I say so foolishly, no. That there was some discussion at the meetings, again, so foolishly, emphasize foolishly, at the meeting that morning. Here's the first thing, is that the day of the trading deadline, that Thursday, everybody is in the office at 5:30 or 6 in the morning because you're on the East Coast time. So there was a thorough discussion about Jeff Malone. Possibly teams were offering for the trade for him, and we said at that time, no. As I said to Jeff Malone, as I was shooting foul shots, I said, we're not going to trade you. The second I said it, within 5 seconds, I see the general manager, Scott Layden, scurrying towards me and says to me, "Coach, do you mind if I say something? Do you mind if I talk to Jeff Malone for right now?" So I say, "Of course not." That's when Scott Layden told Jeff Malone that he was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers and a future first-round pick, and that's when the Jazz acquired this guy named Jeff Hornacek and Sean Green. Sean Green played for the 76ers. We later waived him after 3 games, and that's when the Jazz got Jeff Hornacek, whose number's retired, number 14 in the Raptors. Just quickly about that trade, how impactful it was. So let's go to Lakers also right now with Luka Doncic. The Jazz are winning 50-something games every year in the early 90s, but never having a winning road record. The second we traded for Jeff Hornacek for the rest of that season, the 1993-94 season, and for the next 6 years, so Jeff Hornacek played for the Jazz for 6.5 years, a winning road record every single season. Went from not a winning road record to a road record for 6.5 straight years. And the learning point about that, in playoff basketball, you need that third scorer that's reliable in a playoff situation where if one of the main guys is struggling because of schematically they're taking away everything that he has to offer, you need that third guy who becomes now your second guy. So in Jazz basketball, just say it was John Stockton, Karl Malone, Jeff Hornacek. 2 of those 3 guys have to play well all the time for the team to advance in the playoffs. In the most recent future, that would have been Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert as defensive player, and probably Bojan Bogdanovic or Joe Ingles to play well. So it does happen. It does happen all the time where it's eerie feeling when someone tells them you're not being traded, and suddenly they are.
It's a wild time if you're on the trading block. We still have an hour before the trade deadline comes down. There's still a couple of Utah Jazz guys that might get that phone call, might have that moment. Where are these guys right now? Where's Jordan Clarkson sitting right now? What's John Collins doing at this moment?
Oh, very much. So right now, practice is probably just slightly over right now. Jazz play tomorrow night in Phoenix, so I'm assuming they're going on the airplane at 3 or 4 this afternoon. Yeah, they're in the facility right now, and they're very slowly getting dressed, Sean. Now, last night's game, we just showed you about Stephen Curry. So we were there. James Peterson and I were there on the court, and at 5:30, 20-6, the Warriors players were out there, and suddenly we see Steve Kerr walking onto the court at 20 minutes to 6. And he calls those guys back into the locker room, including Stephen Curry. So Steph Curry didn't have his classic workout where he didn't have it.
He didn't do his full shooting.
He did not. He did not, wow. Sean. I was there, right in front. I was 3 feet away from him, and him and Bruce Fraser, who's the workout guy with him for decades. And then so there was no one shooting. So suddenly everybody's out there shooting, and Steph is getting ready for his routine. Out comes Steve Kerr. All those guys go back in the locker room for about 12 minutes, and then out comes just 1 or 2 guys, and Steph comes out, and it just wasn't the same. So meaning this, that some of my best friends were traded, some of the people that I genuinely like have been traded, and now we have to move forward.
Wow. Yeah, it's an intense time. And we've got an hour left of it. We'll get into the Utah Jazz role in these next now 58 minutes. Will something happen? Gordy Chiesa reads the tea leaves and tells us the future. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Welcome to hour number 2 of the Sean O'Connell Show. Gordy Chiesa hanging out for another Well, he's scheduled for another 24 minutes. I might make him stay another 30. You never know. I always go long, and anytime we can pick Gordy's brain, it's good for us. 53 minutes until the NBA trade deadline closes. Utah Jazz have functionally they've stockpiled some second round picks. Gordy, is that what it all comes out in the wash? That's what you've got, right?
Right now, they have they've acquired this trading deadline a 2025 second round via the Clippers from the Lakers, a 2025 second round from Dallas, a 2030 second round via the Clippers. So that's where they are right now as far as they're acquiring assets for future trades. Dennis Schroeder, who was part of the trade with Jimmy Butler, he has an expiring contract at $13 million for the rest of the season. I'm assuming that there'll be a buyout, that he won't report, and that he'll be bought out of the contract. Where the rules are, if you're on an NBA roster during the season, so Dennis Schroeder was, you have to sign with a new team by March 1st.
Okay.
So it's a deadline right now. And also, remember, the Jazz also, Mo Bamba was the Jazz waived. P.J. Tucker, the Jazz got traded again. Now eventually he's on Toronto Raptors. And remember, let's not forget, Jalen Hood-Schifino hasn't reported yet. So he might be part of a trade in the next 45 minutes or so. So the question in Jazz basketball, we all love this guy. What do you do with Jordan Clarkson, who had a sensational game last night? He reminded everybody how good he was, and he is as far as a sixth man. Here's his contract, so it's relatively tame as far as the NBA salary cap structure. The mid-level exception is $12.8 million. Jordan Clarkson makes this year $14.1 and next year $14.2. And by the way, he can shoot the ball, and every good playoff team wants a guy like that. So what do you do with him, Sean, in the next 45 minutes or so?
What do you do, Gordy?
Yeah.
Better question for you.
No, the answer is that I from his point of view, I would try to attempt to move him, trade him.
Yeah.
Because he's a good player, and that as the Jazz go forward with they're building through the draft almost exclusively, and they're going to try to save have some money saved for getting a top free agent maybe this summer, which is good. Then that's the plan. And so with Jordan Clarkson, he has value. You can be able to get some second-round picks and maybe even a first-rounder in 2029, 30. I would try to move him.
So that's
in fairness to him. Really, it's more like in fairness to him.
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, he's not as young as he used to be, and you want to see a guy who. It's interesting because I think he's the favorite player of a lot of Utah Jazz fans right now. He's a fan favorite, but he's also counterproductive for you in terms of your current goal.
Correct.
Which is wild, right? Because
yes.
he's going to help you win basketball games.
Right.
That's not what you're trying to do necessarily right now. You're not serious about competing night in and night out, and a guy like that has a hard time shutting it off. So the expected return for you would be second-round picks or maybe a first-round pick years from now.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And he turns 33 on June 17th, so it's right before the NBA draft. So if they just say for the narrative, if the Jazz do not trade him with the next X amount of minutes, there might be a trade before the draft. The draft situation, which is June 26th and June 27th, where he could be part of a trade that week. Because, again, he's a good player, so it's not a question of that we don't think he's a good player. He's an effective scorer off the bench. That's what he does. He's a wild card in a positive way. Hey, if I'm the Orlando Magic, who's a good team that's been banged up, I'm staring right at Jordan Clarkson as far as getting him on my team to come off the bench. The Magic have a hard time scoring. So they play really good defense. They need off the bench energy spark plugs, and that's what Jordan Clarkson. That's what he does well. His agent's Rich Paul of Clutch Sports, also the same agent of Colin Sexton, and these people have a lot of other tremendous clients. So we'll see what they do in the next few minutes.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So it's Jordan Clarkson, but he was not the only person. I mean, Sexton seems like he's probably available. John Collins. Who else could we see off of this Utah Jazz roster in the next 48 minutes?
Those are the three. Walker Kessler, he's improving each year. He had the interesting rookie season where he popped out of nowhere and played very effective. Last year, it was slightly lesser. This year, he's absolutely picked it up. You get the feeling that his upside is tremendous. He still has a difficult time scoring on his own. He's a recipient scorer, and that's okay, meaning law pass, dish-offs in the lane, stick back, broken plays. But as his evolution as far as his scoring skills, meaning a face-up jumper, 15 to 18 feet, the short corner three, which is 22 feet, he'll evolve into that. But he can block shots, and also he hustles. So I would say that he's part of the Jazz future, because it's very difficult to take a running big man that plays relatively hard most of the time, and that he's on a 50-win team someday he would be your fourth or fifth best player, and that's good, especially where he was drafted at number 22 in the selection process, and he's basically overachieved his draft ranking.
A trade we haven't talked about yet that involved some local interest. Kyle Kuzma out of Washington, and with a Milwaukee Bucks team that now has, they've got some talent on that roster. They got rid of Middleton, who's a little bit longer in the tooth, so to speak. So what do you think of Kuzma to Milwaukee?
It's a good fit. Kyle Kuzma can score the ball, and that's what they need as far as Dame Lillard from Weber State is a knockdown shooter. Giannis is a force of nature, but in the playoffs, he gets exposed his lack of consistent range shooting, even though he drives the ball and he's unstoppable with transition. Remember, in the playoffs, it's a half-court game. So Kyle Kuzma gives them a guy that's a stretch, I'll call him a four-man, and that he's going to add to their scoring ability, and that he'll give them a chance to, when they double team Dame Lillard, the ball be swung to him, he can make that open 3-point shot. So it makes a lot of sense. Also, with the besides him, is that the Bucks added a young, athletic, bouncy, again, role player named Jericho Sims for the Knickerbockers, and that he will help them. Ironically, is that another U player got traded. DeLon Wright got traded to Knickerbockers.
Yeah.
So DeLon Wright goes to the Knicks from the Bucks, and he'll give the Knickerbockers a defensive off the bench stopper in a playoff game, again, to try to slow down Donovan Mitchell type, to slow down let's go Jalen Brunson. Again, I didn't say stop them. I just mean where suddenly, because you're a defense for that 7 or 8 minutes, that person goes to 0 for 3 versus what? 2 for 3, and that's the margin of error in so many games. So these role players that are being traded, they're specifically team has a need, and those guys are going to perform in that role.
All right, so there's several different categories of trade that are being debated right now and that are happening right now. The immediate short term, let's have an effect on this season. Let's balance things out and make a run at a title, or at least a deep playoff run. And then there's more of what the Utah Jazz would be involved in, which is groundwork for things to happen your way in the future. Focusing in on the short-term gains here, Gordy. We got, 30-ish games left in the NBA season for these teams?
Yeah, so the Jazz right now, the Jazz have 33 games left, the Jazz.
Okay, so
between 33 to 35 on tape.
Now, who improves their next 33 to 35 games the most based on the moves we've seen so far, with, of course, 44 minutes left before the trade deadline comes down?
One, by far, the Lakers, and two, because of the one person, De'Aaron Fox.
Okay.
Goes to the Spurs. And so that he's going to help them with Victor Wembanyama. And I'm interested to see if Chris Paul gets traded in the next few minutes. Because now with Chris Paul turns 40 in May. So again, tremendous career. He was there to try to help the development of Victor Wembanyama. But now De'Aaron Fox is there now. And so Chris, if he does stay past this deadline, is that there might be even a buyout with Chris Paul. And so the Spurs, with De'Aaron Fox being there to go in as a future sidekick with Victor Wembanyama, it would help them tremendously. So the Spurs have gotten better. Also, as far as the Miami Heat, so we talk about Jimmy Butler going to the Golden State Warriors. The Heat got back Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, and they got from the Raptors a little while ago Davion Mitchell. So the Heat got better also. They got rid of Jimmy Butler as far as away from their building, and they added Wiggins, who we know was a former All-Star. He's got incredible talent. His problem is being inconsistent. They think that with Eric Spoelstra that he can flourish in that system and that he's going to play well for them.
Gordy Chiesa for just a few more minutes here on the Sean O'Connell Show, our resident NBA guru. I asked James this question. I put it out there for all the listeners, 877-353-0700 if you want to weigh in, at Real OC Sports as well on Twitter. This trade deadline approaching and the movement we've seen of players like Luka Doncic reminds me how difficult it is for a guy in today's modern NBA, in today's pro sports period, to start and finish in the same spot, to be wearing the same uniform for his entire career. In the NBA especially, there's so much transience, there's so much movement around there, guys deciding they want to play together later on in their career. Who's a current NBA player that you think is going to be in the same uniform for his entire career?
Victor Wembanyama.
Okay.
Victor Wembanyama, Nikolai Jokic, because he retired then. If the Nuggets ever traded him, he would go to Serbia and hang out and drink some vodka. And that's fine. Hey, with his horses, and that's fine. That's his choice. That guy's a tremendous player. So those are the two guys that I would say that would do that. And I know it's a long, whoever gets him, but a guy like Cooper Flagg also eventually could be on one team because he's really incredible young talent. We've not seen him in the NBA yet. I get it. So I'm controlling some of my enthusiasm, but he is ultra talented. So those two guys in particular, I would say.
What about Steph Curry? Steph Curry?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Steph Curry also. Again, Steph will retire. It makes if they traded him for some reason that he would retire then. Okay. Now, so Tony Parker was interesting, where a lot of the people at Spurs that I know for 1,000 years, Tony Parker was the epitome of the Spurs, besides Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili, and for some bizarre reason, because they were going to start DeJounte Murray as a young player to make that transition. He said, "Get me out of here." He goes to the Charlotte Hornets. To shoot 38% with the Hornets, win very few games, and he's saying to himself, "What I do this for?"
Yeah, what do you do?
And yesterday, that was Akeem Olajuwon, was the face of the franchise of the Houston Rockets. Akeem with that dream shake, no one could stop him. He goes to the Toronto Raptors, end of his career, to do what? Because to hang out in Toronto, I get it. It's good. It's a great city. However, stay in Houston.
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid, right, when your favorite players play in a different uniform, when Karl Malone ends up playing in a Laker uniform, hard for people to deal with. Patrick Ewing ended his career with the Magic.
And also Seattle Sonics, too.
Yeah, and the Seattle Sonics, that's right. And you're just like, oh, man. And, again, it's your life, it's your career. Do what you want with it. There's this romanticism for the fan in me that's like, no, somebody doing it in one spot for the entirety of their career. And we're just talking NBA basketball, by the way. It exists in all the other pro sports leagues as well. I'm looking at this stuff with Giannis Antetokounmpo, and people are like, well, how long is he going to be there in Milwaukee? Is he still happy there? And if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, that's your guy. That's the guy that took you from obscurity to a championship. You don't want to see him playing in another uniform.
That is correct, and that's the beauty of sports, where the fans get attached to the players, and maybe the critics will criticize some of our players, but the fans will never criticize their own players, because that's who they are. And in Jazz basketball, it's a proud franchise, and that the Jazz players, they know that. That's why most of the times those guys want to stay here. There's been a great myth about Salt Lake City, which I've tried to stop for decades, about living in Salt Lake City. It's all a myth, and that the majority of the people, by far, once they play for the Utah Jazz. Love living here.
Oh, another trade coming down. James Peterson, what do you have for us?
Not a Jazz associated trade.
James.
We are still waiting with bated breath for Shams to drop news about potentially about a Jazz player. This is the Clippers trading Terrence Mann, someone who Jazz fans have nightmares from still, and Bones Highland to the Atlanta Hawks for Bogdan Bogdanovic, 3 second-round picks as well. So they got Bogdan Bogdanovic for Terrence Mann, Jazz villain, and Bones Highland.
It's a good trade for the Clippers because Bojan Bogdanovic will give them consolidate them where he can score the ball in a playoff game, and he got some ruggedness. Terrence Mann was out of the rotation. James alluding to that playoff series when the Jazz lost, unfortunately, to the Clippers, where Terrence Mann was going crazy. When I say crazy, as far as making shots, especially he's really an erratic three-point shooter. But against the Jazz in that series, he made all of them that rainbow three from the corners. And then the Jazz, for some reason, thought that Rudy Gobert could rotate out to close out on him, to guard him. And it's not Rudy's fault. He doesn't have those ability to play closeout defense in a playoff situation. So it helps. It helps the Clippers short term for the playoffs, and for the Atlanta Hawks, who probably would like to be in the playoffs, of trying to strive for it, but now they're redirecting some of their assets because, as we speak right now, is that it's been a struggle for them. The Atlanta Hawks right now are 23-28. Maybe could make the play-in tournament. So for both teams, it makes sense economically, but for the Clippers, it gives them another proven, rugged guy in a playoff series that can make shots.
Gordy, before I ask you to put on your magic hat or look into your crystal ball, what's your list today?
My list today, I've been thinking about Kyle Kuzma, all right, who got traded, former Ute standout. And so I thought about him, making three-point shots. So as of this morning, I made this list of most career-made three-pointers by a stretch big.
Okay.
And here's a stretch big. Here's our criteria on ESPN 700 radio. It's a player that is 6'9" or taller. So 6'9" or bigger. And so think about it. You're a big guy, stretch 4, stretch 5 men. And remember, the first year of the NBA 3 was the 1979-80 season. And let's ask right now our beloved friend, James Peterson, how far is the corner 3?
22 feet, Gordy.
That is correct. How far is the arc 3?
The 23.9?
That's exactly right,
Okay.
23.9. And how far was the old school ABA 3 with a red, white, and blue ball?
Was it 25?
That's exactly right.
Hey.
This guy listens, Sean.
Yeah.
This guy
He's a basketball junkie.
This guy was taught by nuns. He was taught by nuns in yesteryear. He was taught by nuns, I'm positive, just like I was. Here's our list right now quickly. The career-made three-point shots. Number Baker's dozen. Number 13, Al Horford, Celtics, active, 931. Number 12, Tobias Harris from the Pistons, 946 made triples. Number 11, Marcus Morris, 951. Number 10, Kyle Kuzma is the 10th best ever stretch big man making three-point shots. Former Ute standout. He's made 994. So 6 more made threes from the Milwaukee Bucks now. He'll have 1,000 made three-point shots. Number 9, from the Bucks also, his teammate, Brook Lopez, has made 1,028. Number 8, Channing Frye, 1,049. Number 7, he plays for the New York Knicks, Karl Anthony Towns, 1,065. Number 6, some people call him very, very erratic and behavior. Rasheed Wallace made 1,086 made threes. Number 5, he plays with Utah Jazz right now. He's a tremendous range shooter. Larry Marketing has made 1,115 made triples. Number 4 all time, Ryan Anderson, 1,203. Number 3, played most of his career at the Boston Celtics, Antoine Walker, had made 1,386. Number 2, plays for the Miami Heat, Kevin Love, 1,671 made threes, and the number 1 shooting stretch big man in the history of the NBA of most made three-point shots is Dirk Nowitzki. He's made 1,982. Thus, that's my baker's dozen of the most career-made three-point shots of players that are 6'9" or over.
All right,
Dirk.
you look into your crystal ball. Is there another big move that's going to happen in the next 32 and a half minutes?
No, not big move. No.
Yeah. So, like
No.
the Kevin Durant's
Durant.
of the world, those guys, they're not going anywhere.
No, and the reason why is everyone loves Durant, but it's his contract and his age right now, and so that's what makes people hesitant. So it's not the ability. So when you're trying to figure out why wasn't so and so traded, it wasn't that teams didn't like to trade for him, or players in general. It's their contract prohibits them, because you remember the thing called a luxury tax. So most teams are all trying to get under luxury tax as far as not paying, and that's why it's so critical as far as use your money wisely. And the better teams, what they do, they smartly make trades that are based on the economic part of it. So, example, right now, Sean, as you speak right now, the Phoenix Suns on June 30th, if they keep Durant, which they will, they're going to pay in luxury tax $164.3 million to the other owners. So right as we speak right now, there's 10 teams that in luxury tax money, which means 20 teams aren't. So the 20 other owners that aren't paying luxury tax for this season will get roughly $14.5 million on June 30th from the other owners, their rivals, competitors. Thank you for giving us $14.5 million because you mismanaged your salary cap and luxury tax. But the only outlier might be, it was worth it. We're world champions.
Yeah.
In other words, that's the outlier. It was worth every penny because we won the championship. Who will that be? We don't know. Because remember now, this year, if it's not the Celtics winning a championship, there'll be 7 different NBA teams that didn't repeat as being champions.
Wow.
7. So it just shows you that how hard it is to win. In 2019, Raptors. 2020, Lakers in the bubble. 2021, Bucks. 2022, Warriors. 2023, Nuggets. 24, Celtics. And 2025, question mark.
We'll find out. 30 minutes left. Actually, 29 minutes and 49 seconds, if we're going to keep it accurate. Eric Weddle joins us to preview the Super Bowl next. Big thank you to Gordy Chiesa for giving us an hour of your time. Thank you, sir.
It's out, Sean.
It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Now Mahomes lines up by himself, the 11 of the Buffalo Bills, trailing by 3, late first half in the gun, 1st and 10. Looks at a 4-man front, shotgun snap, 4-man rush, line drive throw near side, Bellick out to the 5, diving to the pylon. It is a touchdown by Worthy. What a throw, but what a turn and dive. An 11-yard touchdown pass as he takes it down the near sideline, and the Chiefs have recaptured the lead of the AFC Championship game.
Xavier Worthy touchdown catch in that AFC Championship game. That sound from Westwood 1. Kevin Harlan on the call. We are your home of the NFL of Super Bowl 59. The playoffs coming to a close this Sunday. Joining us to talk all things Super Bowl champion, Utah football legend, our guy Eric Weddle on a Thursday. E-Dub, what's up?
What is the word? Finally, this game is coming, meaning we can finally turn the page on the football season and start looking forward to next season.
Are you already in that mode because you don't love the outcome of this Super Bowl one way or another? You just ready to turn the page, hit the reset button, and see what happens next year?
Yeah, I mean we're kind of like, for my place in high school, we're already kind of working towards that, but it's kind of like the unofficial, official. You know, we can move forward. We can get rid of all the negativity and bad things that may have happened in our seasons, whether it's Utah football, whether it's RB, whether it's the Rams, Ravens, or even the Chargers a little bit. And then now you can start envisioning ourselves as champions this upcoming season.
I like it. Actually, before we get to the Super Bowl, I want to talk to you about the Pro Bowl games that played out last weekend. And look, because of you, 100% because of you, I had so much love for the Pro Bowl because we got to go down, watch you play in it. You gave us passes and got us into like the events where I'm walking around seeing my favorite players in the game, watching, talking to all these monsters. And I'm like, you know what? The Pro Bowl is a pretty cool event because it's a gathering of all the greatest football players in the world. And yes, the game was what it was, but I thought it was a cool event. And these Pro Bowl games where you've got like punt competitions going into triple overtime and players just saying like, this doesn't matter anymore. It feels like we've jumped the shark and that the Pro Bowl just needs to go away, Dub.
I agree. And there was a sense of duty. There was a sense of, for the past of representing yourself, your organization in the Pro Bowl. And my first time in Hawaii, and I treated it like a game, and I was out there hitting, tackling, and when the draft came about, meaning that there was captains and you're able to draft people, I had multiple players around the league saying, Eric's going to be my first pick because I don't want to get hit by him in these games. But it was true. Like, I didn't want to get embarrassed out there, and I didn't want in national television, look like I wasn't taking it for real. And so now it's just become a mockery in a sense of the game, and they're trying to change it so much that it's flag football, and the football isn't flag. If we're not going to play it the way it's meant to be played, then don't play it at all. And I get the injury factor. I get all this other stuff. And so just don't do it because it's losing the respect and it's losing what the game is when you're not treating it how it is. Now, on the flip side, you do getting together and visiting. Like, just do that. Just do a couple days of skills and give a free week pay of Disney World and keep it at that.
My proposal, and hopefully I can get you to co-sign this, is you take the Senior Bowl and you move it from Mobile, Alabama to Orlando, if that's where they're going to keep doing this Pro Bowl weekend, and you involve the Pro Bowlers with the Senior Bowl, these candidates, these draft prospects. You get the Eric Weddles of the world out there with guys who are playing in the Senior Bowl and doing the crossover, get to know who might be eventual teammates, And if you're a young player that hopes to cut his teeth in the NFL, you get to pick the brain of the best player at your position in the NFL and all that kind of thing. And because the Senior Bowl is not given enough love, and I love that event, and the Pro Bowl is now given too much attention for what they have turned it into. So I want those two things combined, mix the greatest college players in the world with the greatest NFL players in the world, let everybody benefit from the experience.
I mean, that is an incredible idea. My only pushback would be that you'd have to move it from Mobile, which they would not want to do. It brings too much to the community and everything else, that the history, et cetera. But I'm on board. But on the flip side, I would 100% guarantee that of the 50 or so Pro Bowlers, or maybe more, I don't even know how many there are, 100, I would say maybe 7 would be all about it, and the other ones would be like, nah, I'm not doing that.
I don't want to talk to these young kids. They'd just be like, no, get me out of there.
Like I don't want to spend a few hours on the field and watch them and be around them. Like they're just not that personality. So we would have to have the participation of the NFL guys, and I don't see that happening unless, money changes everything. So if you're willing to pay these guys a little bit more money, I don't know. They should just do it for free.
Pay them what they're going to make in the Pro Bowl anyway, right? Because the winning team makes a certain amount of money, the losing team makes a certain amount of money. Just put all that in one big pot, split it evenly, and just be like, you get this, whatever it is, $30,000 if you go spend, an hour on the field with the young prospects and let people watch you coach them up.
Yeah, I mean, I still think most of them wouldn't want to do it because they're just like that. Another thing, since we're talking about All-Star games, I'm shocked that the NBA hasn't went the MLB route and said the winner of the All-Star game has home court advantage in the finals, and that would spark up that game and get that game into a real game, because that's a mockery as well.
You know what? I love that there's actual real-life stakes in the Major League Baseball All-Star game, and most fans hate that. Most people dislike that fact. They're just like, no, this doesn't have anything to do with anything. And it's like, no, that's one way to incentivize players to actually care about the game. You're trying to get home field advantage for your league, hoping that your team – and they don't even do it anymore because people didn't like it enough. So I'm not you and I are on the same page, but I guess we're on a lonely page by ourselves. All right. I want to –
That's why they don't involve us in these type of conversations.
That's exactly right. Eric Weddle's my guest on the Sean O'Connell Show. Super Bowl weekend coming. All right, so we've already talked about the greatness of Andy Reid. We've already talked about Spags, and we've talked about Patrick Mahomes and how he could insert himself even further into the greatest of all time conversation. Away from the obvious stars in this game, the guys that everyone knows to be looking for, who is your eye going to be on? Hey, if this guy has a great game, if these two dudes have a great day, the Eagles can win. Or if Travis Kelce can go off, then the Chiefs are for sure going to win. Or maybe he's too obvious of a star. But is there someone that's below that radar of coaches and quarterbacks and Saquon Barkley, because he's an MVP candidate this year, that you're looking at them and saying, he is the key to this game?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple guys that I think that are standout players. One that stands out, I would say the secondary of the Eagles, they're a top-notch unit. They play well together. Can they tackle, right? Can they really limit those dink and dunk plays? Can they be on their communication when it matters most, which they failed 2 years ago? A couple on those jet motions and the return motions, and the guys are just wide open. Can they be on their P's and Q's and play as one, so you don't just give up easy conversions or easy touchdowns? And also Bond, the linebacker, who's obviously he was a first-team All-Pro and incredible linebacker this year, but this is a big moment for him, and he is kind of the unsung hero in a sense, and he doesn't get – he gets the notoriety, but I think that he can have a huge impact on this game because he's so versatile. He can run, he can tackle, he can make plays. Just if he's able to punch that ball out, force a fumble, interception, just some kind of huge play, a fourth down stop, could be the difference and sway the momentum and sway the game. So I would say those two on the Eagles. And offensively, or on the Chiefs side, can they generate some type of running game with Pacheco and Hunt? I know it's not something that is needed, but can they just alleviate some off Mahomes will be an interesting point to me. And then on defense, can the scheme with Spags limit? I'm interested to see how they stop their running game and then how they control the outside perimeter guys of the Eagles. Are they just going to man them up and say, we're going to live and die with this? Are they going to mix and match some coverages and roll coverages and then get disguise? Or are they just going to line up and say, listen, we don't think Hurts can beat us, and we're going to go with it? So I'm interested on that. I know you probably already chimed on that, but those are the things that stick out to me outside of the big storylines.
I'm glad you brought up Zach Bond. We haven't really talked much about him. How does a guy have a year like this, incredibly productive, first team All Pros you mentioned? He's on a 1 year deal. He's an unrestricted free agent after this, and he's probably, he's one of the most important players on the Philadelphia team, certainly on the defense, and there's no guarantee he's going to be there next year.
Seriously, you just got to tip your hat to Howie Roseman, however you say his name. Time and time again, he finds guys and just reloads his roster off of a league vet minimum on a guy that was just a guy, and it's crazy to see the production this dude has had throughout the year, and to put himself in a great area to get rewarded is outstanding. So he runs that defense. He leads it. Just a very unique and cool story about just a guy that played his role and then gets his op and then takes advantage of it and dominates. So I think he's going to have a huge impact because he's that good of a player. How big of an impact could sway the winner of this game because he's going to be in a lot of plays. The first series of that game last week, he had 7 of the first 10 tackles. It was are they going to block this guy or what?
Eric Weddle, Utah football legend and Super Bowl champion, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. There's nobody on these rosters that's in your situation that came out of retirement off the couch and made it through these playoffs to win a Super Bowl. But every one of these rosters in the NFL has a guy that's either at the end of his career or near the end of his career, and this is the missing piece. This is the thing that puts the cherry on top of the sundae of what has already probably been a pretty successful run in football in a person's life. But because you were able to get it done in an unconventional fashion, but you got that Super Bowl ring, how significant really was that for you in I guess, living out the full dream? Because you had already done so much, but what was the significance of adding a Super Bowl championship to the long list of accomplishments?
Yeah, it's being a few years removed from it, it's not anything that ever would have defined me one way or the other. I think really feeling like I had an impact on that playoff run, and I was definitely not just someone that jumped on the bandwagon and rode in there. I was on the front line, and so it's much more meaningful for me, to be a part of it, even though I wasn't part of the whole journey. And it's really unique. I don't ever have the ring out, so I don't see it much. I have the replica trophy that is on my desk, but I think of that game, and I think of more so the experience with my family and friends and community, and everyone that was supporting me throughout my entire career. I think of that moment. I think of that, the love of getting behind me and supporting me. And honestly, the Super Bowl itself, I really don't remember much or the confetti or celebrating in the locker room. I didn't get to do any of that because of my ruptured pec and the stupid COVID rules and couldn't see my family. So it was kind of like a miserable experience when I think of the Super Bowl. But then I think of the journey and the family, and that's what sticks out most of being a part of it. Being a Super Bowl champ, I am in a fraternity now, and there is some notoriety per se with that with me. I just like that my family and friends were able to experience it with me.
All right. I might regret doing this, but you're a real Laker fan, and your favorite team was able to pull off the fleecing of the century, and you got Luka to play alongside LeBron now. Your thoughts on the trade that went down and shocked the entire world, even in Super Bowl week, allowed the NBA to dominate the conversation, at least for a couple of days?
Yeah, when I first heard, I was hoping it was LeBum that got traded, not AD. And you almost, like everyone else, you think to yourself, this is some type of joke. And to be able to get the eventual superstar for the next decade in LA, they always just seem to find a way to get the next guy. And I wouldn't put LeBron in there. It went, the 80s to the Kobe era, and now Luka will take the reign of the next superstar to hold the gold and purple and hopefully bring them back, because they're not a very good team. They're not a very well-run organization. They can't build a team the right way. And, obviously I'm a diehard, but when they signed LeBron, I wasn't a fan, and his views on a lot of topics have stirred me away until he gets up out of there. Then I'll start watching again. So I don't really know much about the Lakers or anybody else in the NBA. It's a hard game to watch. It's not very appealing. It's not good basketball. And they definitely need to reassert themselves on what needs to change, because it's not a very good product.
Well, it's not a good product in Salt Lake City right now as they're tanking toward the bottom of the league, but we're trying to be patient through it. All right, last thing. Who's going to win this Super Bowl?
Gosh, I don't know. I'm just going to stick to it and say we're witnessing the greatest run in NFL history with a three-peat, which has never been done. And it's hard to deny so many factors that are going against that. I don't want the Chiefs to win. I think they're going to win. I think it's going to be 34-31, like those Utah days over BYU. But in the favor of the Chiefs. Greatest dynasty in pro football history we're going to watch on Sunday.
It seems to be where a lot of people are coming down on it, and I can't dispute it, even if it's not what I want to see necessarily, but it's a lose-lose for me. I don't want to see the Eagles win one either. Still hoping for a good game, and as always, appreciate your insight as a Super Bowl champ and a guy who played it at the highest level. Have a great day, dude. Thank you.
You got it, brother. Of course.
Eric Weddle thinks it's going to be the Chiefs. Who have we asked so far, James, that said they think it's going to be the Eagles? It's like everyone can build a case as to why it would be the Eagles, but when I ask for the prediction, I feel like everyone has said Chiefs.
We should have kept track of this. I feel like it was either Sam Bruckhouse or Sean Syed from Sumer Sports. One of them said Eagles.
I think it might have been Sam.
Was it Sam on Monday?
I think it might have been Sam on Monday.
Because Jeff said he went with his Chiefs, right? And then I think basically everyone else. Lindsay, did we ask her last week? We'll have to have her refresh her pick today.
Yeah, well, she's joining us in 5 minutes, so she can refresh her pick. In fact, we'll take a double break here. We'll come back, talk a little Super Bowl again, this time with Lindsey Rhodes, who's part of that Sumer Sports Network, host of their number one NFL podcast. Sean O'Connell Show with Lindsey Rhodes next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, we're going to try to check in with Lindsey Rhodes, NFL insider down at Sumer Sports. Super Bowl this weekend. Most picks coming in for the betting favorite, the Kansas City Chiefs. But we'll see how it plays out. Reminder to all of you folks out there that if you're having a Super Bowl party, you should be making sure that the menu at said Super Bowl party is elite, all right, top notch. We're going to get some hookups from our friends at Harmon's on that front. So I think that it's just, don't worry as much about how the game plays out. Worry more about how you're going to feed the people coming over to your house. Public service announcement from Sean O'Connell Show.
The most important thing about Super Bowl Sunday, right?
Trade deadline is over. It's done.
Yeah, you want me to update you on the last flurry, potentially the last flurry of trades? Let's see. I mean, sometimes these are pending, but so we may get one or two more come out that are the paperwork is in for, but officially the trade deadline is over. The Jazz made a trade, OC.
Aha! Which beloved longtime Utah Jazz man is being shipped away?
Dennis Schroeder is going to the Pistons.
Dennis Schroeder.
Anticlimactic Jazz trade.
I was going to buy you a jersey. I was going to get you a Dennis Schroeder Jazz
One of those
jersey.
highlighter yellow Dennis Schroeder Jazz jerseys. Oh, man.
Sorry, James. That was going to be my gift to you.
That's a bummer.
For your upcoming birthday, which is on a day that I definitely know.
It actually was about 10 days ago.
Is that true?
Yeah.
No, James, we missed your birthday altogether.
Yeah, it's
okay.
okay.
Sorry, dude.
It's okay.
The only way that I know birthdays, my immediate family, people I've known since like third grade, I might remember their birthday, and then I rely 100% on Facebook for everything else because Facebook's the one that tells you.
Yes. There's Lindsay calling now. Let me get her on the phone for us.
Kevin Durant not traded by the Suns is some of the big breaking news here. If that is news, I guess it's not news because it didn't really break. Kevin Durant staying. Jordan Clarkson, as far as we know, staying. John Collins staying. Colin Sexton staying. So this Utah Jazz team, aside from acquiring, I think we're up to 5 second-round picks now, didn't really make – we'll see what the compensation they got back for the Dennis Schroeder trade was. But –
yeah, haven't seen anything on that yet.
Nothing uber significant for the Utah Jazz. And that's totally fine as long as this roster – glad to see Jordan Clarkson stay, especially if he wanted to stay. I know he does like it here. If he wanted to go and maximize his potential to win soon and now – I feel bad that they weren't able to move him because I'm sure there were a lot of conversations had, and maybe some paperwork will come down and surprise us, but it doesn't seem likely.
There's a couple other minor trades, but one other I think we need to air here, make sure our listeners know about. Marcus Smart is on his way out of Memphis to the Wizards. It sends 2 second-round picks to the Grizzlies, and a first-round picks going to the Wizards. So the Wizards get Marcus Smart, a first-round pick, for 2 second-round picks. So that's a guy obviously not a superstar, but a bigger name around the league, bigger name veteran around the league, heading out of a contender to a team that's tanking in the Washington Wizards,
and hopefully can help Washington win a game or two more than they otherwise would have.
Yes,
and then the Utah Jazz can accelerate in their tanking race. It's depressing talking about that too much. Let's talk more Super Bowl. Lindsey Rhodes, kind enough to join us again from Sumer Sports. Lindsey, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing really well. How are you?
Doing great. We're closer and closer and closer to this Super Bowl game being played. Obviously, New Orleans abuzz. One of the fun things, for me at least, about the Super Bowl is when you get to see and hear from all of the other NFL guys, current players, former players, descending on one particular city, joining each other on podcasts and things like that. So away from the game itself, who has been the most interesting player or person to hear from this Super Bowl week for you?
Oh, That's an interesting question. I mean, we've been talking to so many different people. I don't know that anyone specific pops out, but it's been fascinating to just get all of the different types of opinions. And, here on Media Row, you have former offensive linemen and people who play different positions, and you kind of look at the game through different prisms. And so you'll have a deep dive about Jalen Carter and how he's going to impact the game, and which of the, interior offensive linemen for the Chiefs, or how are they going to handle him, which, by the way, I think is actually a pretty big question, because one of the issues that they've had on that offensive line, their weakness is relatively on the outside. They're really strong through the middle. And so that's a good on good matchup. I don't know. It's so fascinating to talk to people from all over the country, and then all of the different players too, with their different perspectives, and kind of hear what people are talking about and what's on their mind going into this game, because there's so many different ways that you could attack it.
I'm sure you haven't talked about Patrick Mahomes this week at all, so this is going to be brand new for you.
Yep.
From the regular season standpoint, it hasn't been his best year. It hasn't been a particularly fantastic year for him statistically. And yet here we are with him in a Super Bowl again, and there's this belief that, Patrick Mahomes is going to do it if, it comes down to it. In a year that, by his standard, is a bad year, should we believe that Patrick Mahomes in this Super Bowl is still the man, is still the guy?
You know what's so funny about that is that clearly the answer is yes, but none of the numbers support that, right? So this is an interesting, because I work for a data company. Sumer Sports is a data company, data and scouting, though. So there's also a scouting side that, we've got people with 600 years of NFL experience working to kind of put their history and experience and kind of merge those two worlds into one evaluation. But just looking at the data, this is wild. So we have AI metrics that are put together we use tracking data. It's very high tech, and it's player agnostic, which means that you don't have the built-in bias that somebody who's just watching with their eyes would go, yeah, but it's Patrick Mahomes, so that probably wasn't his fault what happened on the play. I bet you the wide receiver, right? You have to kind of figure things out if you're a player who's trying to figure out what happened on the play. What we look at is the way the player's moving, the way that responding to pressure, for instance, the way the player is, if you're a wide receiver, getting open, the way your speed is impacting the play, all these types of different things. For quarterbacks, we can measure decision making, and that is for every frame of every play, we have expected completion probability. We have expected yards that you are. And so it's interesting. You can track ways whether or not the quarterback, for instance, is making the smartest decision. Are you maximizing the number of yards that you could get on this play? And there's tons of probabilities attached to it. Mahomes ranked 27th in our all-in-one metric this year, which is exactly because you just know we have enough. And I think that we have enough data with Patrick Mahomes over the years to know that he was not the 27th best quarterback in the NFL this year, which doesn't mean that the metric isn't doing its job or that it is flawed, but it does mean that all of these things require further context. And so I think how I describe data is the data really pops in certain ways, and then that tips you off to go, why? Why did it do that? Is there more to this story? Is that player, why is he popping, either positively or negatively? And sometimes there's a story that follows. And so he ranked 21st in decision making. His sack avoidance this year was pretty rough. I just think it really paints a picture more of how the offense is this season. But the numbers are saying it was a down year, like you were saying before. But I just think that there's context with regards to the way that they run their offense that must be there, because we all know that he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And we all know that if you put the ball in his hands on a third and whatever, the chances of him converting that third down are greater than most quarterbacks. So it's been a fascinating eval this year, looking at the Chiefs and trying to explain, why? Why are they so good? That's the thing that question that fascinates me the most about this Super Bowl is trying to explain why the Chiefs are here, how the Chiefs are here. And I think that it's so layered.
I'm going to now, armed with the information you just gave me, I'm going to get a little sandwich board, a big poster, right? Patrick Mahomes is the 27th best quarterback in the NFL. Change my mind, and I'm going to walk around New Orleans and see what it looks like.
You're like, according to Sumer Sports reports, like, please don't do that. Please don't do that. But they are so interesting. They're like, so he's there. Here's a stat that I don't think reflects on him necessarily, but I think it's a him stat. They're a team that is a low average depth of target, ADOT, we call it, low ADOT. He's throwing the ball like 6 yards on average. And then they're a high yards after the catch team. They are third in yards after the catch this year. But their leader in this category is Xavier Worthy, who ranks 36th in the category at wide receiver. So that tells me it's not one person who's really pushing them past the finish line. It's systemic. It's everybody if they're getting up to third in that category. So that tells me that that's a Patrick Mahomes stat, and that he is surveying the field, and that he is getting the ball to the person who has the chance to pick up the most yards after the catch, that he sees green grass and he maybe even throws them into that green grass. And so I think that there are ways that he impacts them that aren't necessarily reflected in his stats. And that might be something that we need to take a look at in terms of our AI metrics and trying to figure out how to properly reflect that in the future as we move forward.
Okay, on the opposite side, you have Jalen Hurts, but I think the most important offensive player for the Philadelphia Eagles this year has probably been Saquon Barkley, although Sumer maybe has data that disputes that. I'm just going to run with the premise for now.
Go for it.
How much production is enough for Saquon Barkley in this game? If the Eagles are going to win, what do they need to get out of Saquon?
So this is my favorite betting note of the week. Actually, there are a few that might be a lie, but I like this one. You got to go all the way up to 125 yards to get plus money on Saquon.
Oof.
Like, what? Like, that's insane. That's someone's line in a game. 125. Do you like the over or under? Like, we've got it roughly half and half. Like, it's staying there. What? That's insane. But that's kind of what he's been doing so far throughout the playoffs. And by the way, if there is a unit that is a hole in this game, I think it's the Chiefs' run defense, which has not been particularly good in terms of the way that they closed out the season. So I do think that he is a massive, massive piece to this puzzle. I'm going to push back a tiny bit about who's the most valuable on the team. And I'm going to tell you that I think that the reason that Saquon Barkley is so valuable is because their offensive line is the best in the NFL. And I think that that's an important key to this whole running back resurgence conversation that you keep hearing people having. Like, yes, Saquon had an outstanding year, and Derek had an outstanding year, and Josh Jacobs had an outstanding year, and maybe that proves the doubters wrong, and you should go pay running backs. Well, what do those guys have in common? Good offensive lines, good, healthy ecosystems in terms of the offenses that they went to. What did they not have on their old teams? So you look at Saquon and what he was able to do in New York from an EPA standpoint, that's expected points added. It's evaluating his efficiency metrics, even not even going that deep, just yards per carry, right? He was not this guy last year in New York. Well, we now know he clearly was this guy. He didn't get better at playing running back, so we're just being able to see what an elite running back can do in terms of the ways that he can impact production. You need a good team. And so to me, this actually counterintuitively I think it supports the running back argument that we've been making for years in terms of positional value. And or what it means is that you can pay a running back, but it needs to be an elite running back on an elite team. Do not pay an elite running back to be on a bad team. I think that Joe Shane might have made other mistakes. I don't think that letting Saquon walk was one of them, because I don't think we would be seeing in New York what we're seeing in Philadelphia. I think that that's clear. And even if you just go look at the advanced metrics here in terms of efficiency, yards per carry, EPA, Tyrone Tracy did pretty darn good this year, and he's practically free. So they had money that they could allocate to other position groups that they needed to, because they have a bad roster in a lot of ways. Now, the problem is, how did you use that money? Did you use it on Drew Lock and Devin Singletary? Okay, maybe now we're talking about the fact that might have been better spent on Saquon Barkley. So I understand there are some different ways that you could go about this, But I just think that if somebody this offseason were to look at the running back position and say, running back resurgence, see, we learned everybody was wrong, and then they're a bad team and they go put an expensive running back on that roster, they're not going to get a return on their investment. It's not going to tilt in terms of wins.
Your point about offensive line play especially is incredibly well made, no surprise. And as long as we're talking about the O-line, flipping the focus to the Chiefs side of things, they've had to do some shuffling, and Tooney's out there at left tackle.
Yeah.
And now you've got a guard who's we had Jeff Schwartz on, who's a almost 10-year veteran of the offensive line position, and played guard in the NFL.
Yep.
And he said, look, you could battle at that guard position, but you're probably not going to win a lot of reps. How significant is that for the Chiefs, knowing that they've had to shuffle beyond maybe an ideal lineup on the offensive line?
Yeah. First of all, how wild is it that you can move Tooney from guard to tackle? Like in the draft, we're talking about moving tackles to guard, but to be able to move a guard to tackle says so much about that person's versatility and the fact that he's not just getting crushed on a regular basis. I feel like this game is the name that I keep hearing when I talk to people that are like O-line, D-line experts is they say that they will think that the Eagles are going to want to attack Caliendo.
Yeah.
That's the guy that they'll be keying on. That's the name that I keep hearing this week, which sucks for him. But so I think that's a spot on the line that I would keep an eye on. If I were a viewer that could potentially have the discipline to train my eyes on the offensive line in the Super Bowl and not just follow the ball, I think if you keep an eye on what the Eagles are doing with number 66 for the Chiefs, I think that'll be an interesting pivot point for the game.
Lindsay Rhodes, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about the Super Bowl. You can hear it right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. We've got 10 hours of game day coverage here on your home of the Utes. I've been scrolling through your Twitter, and you've some interesting stuff about Devontae Smith and the precedent, the fact that he's had success against Spags and this Chiefs D. This feels like it could end up being significant, and you're the first person I've seen talking about it.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. So I know nobody there is going to put any money on this game at all. But, if someone wanted to, Devontae Smith is actually one of my favorite prop bets. I haven't checked it in the last day, but the last time I checked it, his prop bet is 49.5 yards. And here's why I like the over on that. He's faced Steve Spagnuolo defenses 3 times in his career. Here's his line. 7 catches for 122 yards, 7 catches for 100 yards, 6 catches for 99 yards. What's going on there? I don't know exactly the answer. My guess is it has to do with, identifying A.J. Brown as somebody that's more important to take out somehow with your best cornerback, which I think clearly is Trent McDuffie. How much do we see him on A.J.? I don't know. But Devontae Smith, that's half of his production. That he's put up against Steve Spagnuolo defenses in the past. And so I think that there's clearly a pattern that's developed, and I think that'll be an interesting one to watch in the game.
So the most important player in this game, outside of that Chiefs offensive line, outside of a quarterback, maybe outside of Saquon Barkley, is who? Devontae?
Did you say offensive player? I'm sorry, Louis Riddick walked by, and I was trying to wave and say I'm on the radio.
No, the guy, the player for you, kind of outside the box that you just know this is going to be the important guy in the game.
Okay, I got one for you, Nick Bolton.
All right.
On the Chiefs defense, because we talked about Saquon and how important he is. Nick Bolton, 8.5 tackles is his line. Maybe look at the over for that. He's only gone over 3 times this season, but I feel like this is a game where Nick Bolton is going to have to be at his absolute best, and I think we'll hear his name called wrapping up Saquon quite a bit. And if we don't, I think that's a very good sign for the Eagles.
When you look at the trajectory of that Eagles offensive line that you've already given so much credit to, and what Saquon is able to do behind it, does that same thing translate to setting up Jalen Hurts for success in this game? Because there's differing opinions on this Eagles quarterback. I'm probably higher on him than most people are because he's He's found ways to win pretty much everywhere he's been in his college career, and now his NFL career is going pretty well. And I don't know. There's some Jalen Hurts hate out there, and then there's some people who think he's underrated. Where do you stand, and how much does that offensive line help him in silencing some of the doubters in this game, at least?
There's no doubt that the offensive line is massive for Jalen Hurts. In terms of the tracking data metrics that I was talking about earlier on, our all-in-one metric has him ranked 9th. That's in the 82nd percentile. If you merge all of the different things that we're evaluating quarterbacks for on the field from a tracking data standpoint. In terms of accuracy, this is his strength. He ranks number 1 at quarterback in terms of accuracy. He's accurate all over the field, every single level. Now, his weaknesses, he ranks middle to bottom of the pack in a handful of things, decision-making being one of them. He ranks 22nd. That means that he's not necessarily maximizing the amount of yards that you could get on a given play. The model really likes quarterbacks that when there is an opportunity to throw to somebody downfield to pick up the most yards possible, it overweights that. So it thinks that maybe he's not throwing the ball to the right wide receiver as consistently as he could be. In terms of timing, he ranks 32nd out of 46. In terms of sack avoidance, which is, this one's wild for me because we think of him as a rushing quarterback, right? 43rd out of 46. So is that because the injury? You know, that he's clearly been banged up for parts of the year, and we've talked about whether or not he has the ability to run at different pockets of the season, and so that tells me that the injury has impacted his play. And also, as far as the 8 quarterbacks that run enough to count as rushing quarterbacks, he ranks 6th and 7th in the run metric and elusiveness rating. So I do think that there are legitimate reasons that you could have a conversation about Jalen Hurts and say how much is he contributing to this or how much is he just sort of along for the ride on a very good roster. And I think that in terms of like paying him, that's a conversation that the Eagles are going to have to try and figure out. In this game, I wonder if he's going to run and how healthy he is to run, because quarterbacks ran on the Chiefs a lot this season and had a 60% success rate doing that. Will Hurts be a big part of this game on the ground is one of the questions I have about him.
I guess questions like this next one are probably harder to support with data, but I want your thoughts on it anyway. Who's under the most pressure here? Patrick Mahomes going 3 in a row, firmly enters the GOAT conversation. Andy Reid, you could say the same thing. Nick Sirianni, there's folks like 3 weeks ago that wanted to see him fired. Jalen Hurts has his doubters. Who's under the most pressure to win this Super Bowl and change the conversation or maybe boost the conversation of his own greatness?
Well, I think it's definitely not Patrick Mahomes or Andy Reid, because those conversations you could have without a Super Bowl win right now. And I think that there's, in the case of Patrick Mahomes, enough time. I have no doubt that when he is done playing, whenever that is, we're going to be having a who is the GOAT debate. Absolutely. Is it Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady? We're not having it now because he just doesn't have enough hardware to make that argument. But I have no doubt that we're going to be. And by the way, if he wins a Super Bowl this year with the way that this team has played, I mean, are they going to win it every year? Or are we like, forget it, don't even play the game? Like, if they win it this year, come on. I think there's no doubt that of the 3 that you mentioned, and probably everybody at Sirianni, because I think that, you know, people look at this roster and they wonder how much credit to give Sirianni. And I think that it's a valid question. And it doesn't mean, yes, he's been here 2 times in 3 years and all of that stuff is super valid. You have to be, at the very least, good enough as a coach. But if then the conversation becomes, well, are you good enough to get past the Chiefs? Are you good enough to get over that last hump? Like, once you get to a certain point, you can't be outcoached by Spags and Andy Reid, right? Now it comes down to the chess match. Can you play the chess match? Can you win the chess match? And I think that his conversation is similar to Sean McDermott in Buffalo, frankly. Are you a truck or are you a trailer? Are you pulling the team with you? Are you the value add or are you along for the ride? And you're being good enough is very, very valuable. But once you get to a point where you're looking at, like, we're a playoff team and now we want to beat the absolute best to win a Super Bowl, can we do that with you? Are you the guy that gives us that edge? Because there's no doubt that Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo are. They absolutely are. We can articulate all the ways that they're bringing value, and they are the reasons that the Chiefs are in this game. And I think that we reverse engineer that conversation when we're talking about the Eagles. So if the Eagles do not win, I think that those conversations start about Sirianni. We'll second guess some of the coaching decisions that happened in the game. If he were to win, that would quiet a lot of that.
Before I let you go, who's going to win this game?
I'm going with the Chiefs, even though I cannot tangibly, which I work for a data company. This is a weird answer. I think that the fact that the Chiefs are here in inexplicable ways, I think they win on the margins. I think they do all of the small things right. I think their coaches are wildly talented at pulling out just the right play at just the right time. And I think it's going to be a close game. And if it's a close game, we all know that means the Chiefs win because they won 17 straight one-score games. My head tells me Eagles. My gut tells me Chiefs. I'm going to go with my gut.
Enjoy the rest of this experience. Appreciate your time and your analysis immensely. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Phenomenal stuff from Lindsay Rhodes. The Sumer Sports team rapidly becoming a favorite here on the show. Every answer they've also got the data to back it up. But how wild are some of those numbers about Patrick Mahomes? So according to that one metric, and this is why analytics should be used properly and given their proper place in sports discussion. According to that overall performance analytic, Patrick Mahomes was 27th and Jalen Hurts was 9th at the quarterback position. If I told you, blind study, that one of these quarterbacks ranks 18 spots higher in overall performance than the other, every football fan on the street would be like, yeah, Patrick Mahomes is 18 spots better than Jalen Hurts. And the opposite is true, at least from that particular analytics. So, yeah, you've got to put context to all of them.
I mean,
that's a fascinating one.
OC, that just confirms what I already thought, though.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's where you were?
Patrick Mahomes is 27th,
yes.
right?
When
absolutely.
When it comes
she
time
said that, I'm like, yeah, well, that makes sense.
When it comes time to rank your top quarterbacks in the NFL, it's 1 through 26, open for discussion. 27th, definitely Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, he's not 28th.
No.
He's not 25th.
He's definitely number 27.
He's 27.
But then how about
that is wild. Sometimes the like I like how she put it. Sometimes the metrics, the analytics will show you something that goes, yeah, that totally fits in with what I thought about him. That quantifies that clutch thing or whatever that we thought about him. Sometimes you see it and you go, how in the world is he so low in that?
Well, that honestly, that is what confirms your clutch argument with Patrick Mahomes. Kind of like regardless of what his performance is on paper and regardless of what he looked like in the regular season, you still trust Patrick Mahomes because you think he has that mythical clutch gene. He has that clutch sort of factor that eludes maybe Josh Allen, eludes whoever else. He's got it. Does Jalen Hurts have it? We get to find out on Sunday, potentially. Also, you could tell Lindsay knows her stuff with football because immediately after making that point, she brought up one of the metrics that shows you how great Patrick Mahomes is at things that not all quarterbacks are great at. He doesn't rank as high as Jalen Hurts in accuracy, but the fact that the Chiefs are so low on average depth of target, meaning he throws short passes that turn into big gains because he understands what a defense is doing. He understands what the coverage is creating in terms of like tackle shells and how to get players into a spot where there's green grass in front of them. That's the stuff you have to look for when you get further into the advanced analytics. All right, well, he's not throwing these big bomb passes where it's 19 yards in the air and then the guy just taps his toes down on the sideline. He's throwing a 7-yard pass that turns into a 19-yard gain. Not every quarterback can do that. He does. And that's a testament also to the talent around him, to the way the plays are drawn up. The Chiefs are a machine, man, and we'll talk about it more tomorrow on the show.
Yeah, what you described, it almost perfectly describes almost every one of Travis Kelce's catches,
yes.
right?
Yeah, that's what Travis Kelce has done.
And George Kittle, too, another great run after the catch tight end, run after contact, yards after contact tight end for your 49ers. Those are the two that come to mind when you say throw that shorter pass, shorter route, you get 20 to 30 yards out of it.
All right, we'll take a quick one here. We got a PGA Tour leaderboard update coming, courtesy of our friends at You Into Golf. We'll check in on any of the final discussions being had around the NBA trade deadline, which, of course, passed 31 and a half minutes ago. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, Valentine's Day is coming up, fellas.
Mason Madsen handling the rock, guarded out at the logo by Ruffin. 9 seconds, 8 seconds, 7 seconds for Utah. Here's Gabe Madsen back to Mason Madsen. 4 seconds, 3. Gabe freeing himself. Shot at the buzzer up and good! He drills it as time expires. A big 3 and a bullseye for Gabe Madsen. Puts Utah up at the half, 32-20.
Running Utes victory over Colorado at the Huntsman Center, 72-59. The final highlight of that Gabe Madsen buzzer-beating 3 at the end of the first half. That's courtesy of Utah Sports Radio Network. Bill Riley, of course, on the call. Tour leaderboard update from the Phoenix Open. This is brought to you by Uinta Golf. The new TaylorMade QI35 woods are the 4th generation of carbon wood technology from TaylorMade. A driver that unlocks a new level of distance, available right now at Uinta Golf. James Peterson, who's on top in Phoenix.
Justin Thomas has shot up the leaderboard. He's tied for the lead with Christian Biesenhout at 5 under. So Thomas's day is over. Biesenhout has a couple holes left. He's through 16. Some of the other guys near the top of the leaderboard, we got Jake Knapp tied for 3rd at 4 under with Nikolai Hogar at 4 under. Also Jordan Spieth, one of a handful tied for 5th at 3 under, 2 shots off the lead so far. Some of the other bigger names on here. Not a ton of the bigger names doing as well, actually. As scrolling down pretty far. Hideki Matsuyama is the next one that I recognize. 1 under, tied for 25th. So some of the bigger names struggling a bit here or falling behind here on the leaderboard. But Justin Thomas tied for the lead, and his day is done. He's finished in the clubhouse. And now, actually, it looks like a bogey on 18 for Biesenhout, so he is solo leader of the in the clubhouse so far at 5 under. That's PGA Tour leaderboard update from the Phoenix Open, brought to you by Uinta Golf.
All right, are you a big procrastinator, James?
I can be, unfortunately. Yeah.
Let's. I am as well. So let's get away from that, and let's focus on what Harmon's is going to do for all of us. All of us procrastinators. Hooking us up. Bob Harmon helping us out as well.
Mason Madsen handling the rock, guarded out at
All right, Valentine's Day is coming up, fellas. That's right. You have not thought about it. You have not pre-planned to make. We're here to rescue you with the help of Harmon's, the flower shop at Harmon's. Not just flowers, chocolates, the delicious meals, the date nights. They can take care of all of it. Bob Harmon joins us here on ESPN 700. Helping bail us all out, Bob. I love it.
Yeah, we're a week out. I mean, you put in context, we are a week out today. So here's the thing. We know how it rolls. You get busy. There's great intent because you do care.
Yes.
I know that is true.
Yes, we all care,
That is
fellas.
the way it rolls. But sometimes we just don't get her done. So here's the thing. Just write it down right now, or put it in. Use your AI on your phone. Just tell yourself, okay, let's get this done. And you just get an online order rolling right now,
all right.
And you can get it delivered anytime, between now and then. Because earlier seems to be better, because it's that. Oh,
you look a lot more
super thoughtful.
Yes,
super thoughtful.
You really planned ahead. You really do care.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bob,
Exactly.
You're saving us all.
I know. And then if that if it still falls out because you just didn't quite get around to it, you could all of our 20 stores, we will have you absolutely covered. We're going to have hundreds of different arrangements ready to go, whether they're, decor that's going to just be beautiful on the mantle or the kitchen table, or it's going to be a creatively done for you, a special design. We do them ourselves out in West Valley. We have a design center, and we've had that now for going on.
All right, fellas, we're saving your behinds here.
Yes.
And I say we are saving mine also included in the behinds that need to be saved. Now, flowers are wonderful, always a classic.
Right.
but you've got more than just the flowers, the chocolates, for the folks out there who maybe want to cook up a nice meal
Yes.
for the significant other.
Well, here's how I look at that too. I don't know about you, but I would always dread that. Okay, if I don't get the order, if I don't get a spot at the table early enough, if I don't get the reservation done, I'm waiting.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting a long time, not for
Yes.
me. And there's no way of cutting the line during Valentine. That can get MMA, right?
you could end up fighting. You're either gonna fight with the host at the restaurant, or you're gonna fight on the way home from the dinner that you had to wait 2 hours for.
So don't do that. Don't do that. Just you can go down to Harmon's. We've got and these are all on sale, but we have Double R Ranch. We buy from two amazing purveyors of beef. And one is Double R Ranch, and the other one is Bar 10. We only cut choice, prime, and Wagyu. So that is the top three. That's the top shelf of all of the cuts on beef, and that's the grading. And you can go in, and then we can complement that with surf and turf. We have lobster tail, or you can go with our Gulf steam shrimp that we do right in store. And now you've got a true surf and turf rolling. And how do you get to the heart? Through the stomach.
That's right. And of course, you got to throw some sweet on. Sweet on the end.
Yeah, you do.
Dessert on Valentine's Day, obviously.
A little chocolate something, right?
Yeah.
So we do our own fresh pack, and this time of year we get a lot of different chocolates in our fresh pack. One of our number one, believe it or not, is chocolate covered gummy bears.
Okay.
And who's not going to not like that, And apparently, I just found out that they might have been invented here in Utah by Sweets Candy Company.
Is that true?
Let's verify that. I think
a great contribution to society.
Yes, and I don't know if that was a
offered.
mistake. The bear fell into the chocolate or whatever happened there. But anyway, that worked out. So, but beyond that, we have Kavanaugh are bringing their hearts again this year, and then you can have it creatively put on there, to someone special and a name, and then Sweets Candy Company does a great job. So don't worry about the sweet end of it too, but you can also go maybe that custom. It's kind of like maybe a Christmas stocking effect, and you can do that beautiful little ornament or something that maybe that mug that she wanted for hydration or something, right?
Well, the beauty of Harmon's is you can get all of it in one place: the flowers, the chocolates, the dinner. My wife is really big on like the bath salts and all that kind of stuff. You've got a whole huge section of that. One-stop shop for all the Valentine's Day needs.
Yeah. Don't sweat it. Don't sweat it. We got you.
Harmon's hooking you up this Valentine's Day. I can't let you get out of here without asking you some sports questions.
Okay.
We are a sports station.
You are.
You're a man of considerable influence and import in this community. So,
Oh, man. No pressure.
First of all, Super Bowl this weekend. There are some Utah connections in
Yes.
the Super Bowl,
Yes.
obviously. Chiefs, Eagles. And by the way, Super Bowl spread, if you need the dips, you need the cracker and meat and charcuterie tray, you need the steaks, you need the ribs, you need all that. Guess where you can go? Harmon's. All right, but who's going to win this game, Bob Harmon?
And you're not gonna give me a flavor of where you're going with that either, are you?
I'm not. No
You're
way.
not. Okay.
No way.
All right. Don't boo me, but I have seen a lot of red. And Mahomes and the gang, they are legit. But I'm really kind of pulling for the Eagles this year.
Really?
I really kind of am.
It's a lose-lose for me. I'm a Niners fan.
Oh, I am a Niners fan.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
All
bring it
right.
across.
Here we
Yeah,
go.
there's
a
a
little fist
bump.
bump
Okay.
there. So I'm a Niners fan. So obviously the Chiefs have broken our hearts a couple of times.
Terribly.
Eagles are going to be a problem in the NFC no matter what.
Yes.
So I don't want to root for either of these teams to win. I do want to see history made, I suppose, if I'm choosing the lesser two evils back to back to back. I'm just hoping for a great game, I think, like a lot of people are. And this is one of the most important decisions in Utah sports history, all right? I need your vote on Utah Hockey Club as a permanent name instead of just the placeholder. Outlaws, or are you Team Mammoth? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Wow. Did you say mammoth?
Mammoth.
Like in prehistoric?
The mighty
woolly
mammoth.
Wow.
11-foot-long tusks stomping through the tundra.
Oh, man. Well, you just convinced me. I think mammoth's got something rolling with it.
I was trying to lead the witness there.
Yeah,
I'm very much Team Mammoth.
I could tell. You're
All right.
leaning into that.
That's right. Your neighborhood grocer has now Co-signed Team Mammoth.
Oh, man.
Harmon's for all your Valentine's Day needs, all your needs for the big game coming up this weekend. One-stop shop for everything. Bob, thanks for bailing us out.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Lots more to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Two Incubus tickets to give away at 877-353-0700, Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. Leaning on an interview we did earlier with Lindsey Rhodes, talking the upcoming Super Bowl. Sumer Sports has an analytic out there, total quarterback performance, pulls a bunch of things in. Where did Patrick Mahomes rank in the total performance metric that we talked about during that interview? Where was Patrick Mahomes ranked out of all of the quarterbacks in the NFL? 877-353-0700. Time for a little crosstalk with Spence Checketts, who is, of course, the host of The Drive, brought to you by Advanced Window Products. If you need new windows, you should be buying direct from a local manufacturer, Advanced Window Products. All the sales, all the installation, all the warranty coverage is done right here in-house. No middleman markups. $2,500 off. 10 windows or more. AdvancedWindows.com or 801-850-9100. Spence Checketts, welcome. How are you?
What a wild day, man. I don't think we've ever seen an NBA trade deadline like this before. Not just the number of moves, but the consequential types of trades. And it looks like the Jazz made one small one today. Dennis Schroeder joins the list of Jazz legends, Russell Westbrook and Derrick Rose. Never wore a Jazz jersey, but for Jazz fans that might be confused as to why the Jazz are doing this, John Hollinger wrote a good piece today for The Athletic, and he essentially said, look, in pro basketball right now, with the landscape of what the new collective bargaining agreement has done to the league, you're either in or you're out. And the Jazz are just very much out. They just are. And they're on the outside looking in, taking advantage of teams that want to make deals to grab some more assets. And so I've seen a lot of like, wait, all of these great players were available. The Jazz didn't even try to get involved. Well, they're out right now. They're on the sideline, even though they had a nice win last night against Golden State. So the Jazz made 5 deals. We'll break them down today. And obviously there's a football game on Sunday that, we need to talk about. What's your gut tell you, by the way, Super Bowl?
My gut's telling me it's going to be the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Making history.
Yeah.
We're gonna dive deep into it again tomorrow, and we've been talking about it all week. But it's really interesting because we had an enlightening conversation. Sumer Sports is an analytics company that is really gaining a bunch of traction. They're down there in New Orleans right now. They're doing all these really great things on the video board with NFL players, former NFL players, and stuff. And the metrics, the numbers, don't support any of this confidence we have in Patrick Mahomes specifically.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Patrick Mahomes, and we've seen him do it before, and we believe he's going to do it again. And he's coached by one of the best in the business, maybe the best in the business, and the defense that helps him out in his winning efforts is coached by maybe the best in the business. So just a lot of reasons that I think that, for the Kansas City Chiefs to go 3 in a row is a very realistic possibility.
8-0 against Vic Fangio, Mahomes is. I read that today, which I did not know.
Did not know that either.
Yeah, Vic Fangio has a lot of success against a lot of teams and a lot of quarterbacks. Philly allowing 174 yards passing, which is the best in the NFL. But I think most people, it seems like they're on the same page, that Mahomes simply finds a way to do it. It's not the most exciting Super Bowl narrative.
Arguably, the 2 most significant personalities in an organization are not universally accepted, loved, thought of highly, even by that city. So Jalen Hurts has an opportunity like very few athletes we've ever seen to elevate the conversation around himself.
Yeah.
And the same, I think, should be true for Nick Sirianni, although if they win, I don't know how he gets the credit for it. Philadelphia sports fans are a nightmare.
Oh, they're the worst. They are the worst. Boston is in the mix, but Philly's probably the worst. But, yes, this is all Howie Roseman has given him the best roster in pro football.
That's right. And it's like, well, all he had to do was not screw it up.
Right.
All right.
No, your point is spot on. I've talked about it for a while. Like, it is wild that the 2 question marks in Philadelphia are what most people believe to be the 2 most important dynamics of a pro football team. And on the other side, those are the 2 dynamics of Kansas City. You don't even think about it.
Yeah, those are the 2 reasons that everyone's saying, like, well, yeah, it's probably going to be Kansas City because they have Patrick Mahomes and they have Andy Reid.
Yeah.
So somehow Philadelphia is here despite their quarterback and despite their head coach. That actually makes 0 sense at all.
For sure.
But here we're at. That's where we're at.
National Signing Day yesterday. I was, you've been
That's so funny.
Yeah, I know, but you've been doing this a long time like I have. And you can remember about a decade ago when it was National Signing Day, you planned your entire show.
Correct.
Around National Signing Day. Now with the early window, the transfer portal, another window opening in the spring, it was almost like an afterthought. I didn't hear a lot of people really discussing it at all.
I'll be honest with you. I forgot about it until about halfway through my show.
Which is so wild.
And I was like, I should probably find a way to fit. But Utah didn't break any big news on the signing front.
Right.
There wasn't anything hyper significant there. BYU added 4 guys that may or may not end up being rotational players for them. So it's just like, all right. Because, now the early signing period is the signing period. And the transfer portal windows are more significant even than that high school signing period. So,
what do you think resonates with college football fans more, National Signing Day or schedule release day? What do you think people look forward to more?
Probably schedule release day.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, I mean, the other thing is it's so rare that a lauded recruiting class and I respect people that do the recruiting thing for a living, and I respect the grind. Once upon a time, all of us, I think, felt like we had to be experts about everything. And now that so many people are niche, it's so much easier just to say, like, look, I don't know a rip about these kids. Let's bring in the guys from the recruiting service that do it every day.
Who, by the way, they do such a good job now.
Yeah.
Way better than it was like 10, 15 years ago.
For sure, because it is their main gig. They're not hosting a 3-hour midday show where you have to talk about the Jazz and the Utes and whatever else. This is the one thing they do. But I always just kind of chuckle when I just hear, recruiting class superlatives and, hyperbolic takes like, hey, I know it's 38, but the Utah roster really is technically top 15 or 20. You just wait. And then 3-4 years down the road, you look back and you're like, half the kids never played for the team. Maybe a handful played and maybe 3 or 4 actually popped. I mean, it's this thing we do where it's like, okay, they got everybody they wanted. But if we went, every 4 years and looked back to, okay, here's the recruiting class 4 years ago, especially now with the transfer portal, very few of them really make a massive difference over the long haul, which is interesting.
Well, yeah, you add the most significant layer to that whole cake in if they pop, do they stay?
Right.
Which is now a question for all of these guys.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I enjoy signing day for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool to see that moment for a high school player, right? It's cool to see that moment for coaches and parents and all that kind of thing. And that, we have relationships with guys on this staff. We know the guys that they wanted and how excited they get about having the opportunity to develop somebody. I mean, Morgan Scalley was tweeting today about Clark Phillips and the numbers about Clark Phillips in his NFL career and his collegiate career. It's like, that's somebody that they were really excited about, not just because he was going to help them win football games, but they wanted to create this reality for Clark Phillips. They knew that if he came to Utah, they could develop him into a guy who's grading out very impressively at the NFL level. So, yeah, it's fun to see that, but it's not something I can invest my entire month or week in.
Right. Before I let you get out of here to start the rest of your day, why did Jackson Dart get out of the state? Was it just that he wanted to go to Southern Cal? Yeah, because is that period end of story? Because I honestly have no idea. I'm hearing draft analysts now talk about he's put himself in the same stratosphere as Cam and Shador.
He could be the number 3 quarterback taken. I think it's going to be hard for him with just pro day and the NFL Combine to elevate himself above both of those guys.
Yeah.
But also, if you look at his production, he's threw for like 10,000 yards in college.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. We have not yet graduated as a state out of the scenario where if you have an offer from Ohio State, from Oregon, from USC, from Alabama, that you would rather be at Utah, rather be at BYU.
Mm-hmm.
We've done a great job. These programs, especially Utah, has elevated itself to a conversation nationally with those teams, intermittently at least, sometimes on a regular basis. And you were better for the last, 5-6 years than USC was, but the cachet of being a quarterback at USC or a quarterback at Utah, they're just not the same thing.
Yeah.
And that was true when Porter Gustin went down there.
Penei
a few years
Sewell,
before that.
Oregon, yeah.
Yeah, when Penei Sewell got the opportunity to go play at Oregon. The in-state programs are so much better than they were 20 years ago, reputation-wise and in reality. But you're always going to have a hard time getting people to stay, especially at certain positions, if they have offers from USC.
Yeah. And, you heard a lot of people say, well, Utah and BYU, did they even offer them? Yeah, I'm sure they did. I'm sure Utah and BYU reached out to Jackson Dart to gauge his interest as to whether or not he wanted to stay in the state.
Yeah.
It's not some sort of malfeasance on the part of Kyle or Kalani. My guess is they made a phone call, kick the tires.
And look, there was a pipeline of court. Like you got Jack Tuttle to come here, and he was like, "Oh, it's supposed to be this big deal," and that potentially blocked the decisions of Zach Wilson and then a Jackson Dart and whatever else. And it's like there's consequences to every action.
Right,
These dominoes fall in every direction.
Yeah.
So, look, you got Devin Dampier. You want to keep him here. You want to build the team like the Philadelphia Eagles have built their team that's headed to the Super Bowl. That's the way Kyle Whittingham does it. Knock on wood that everyone stays healthy and buckle up. Let's go.
Yeah. Yep. We'll see. We'll see what the fall brings. But, a couple of interesting college football topics that once upon a time were a massive deal. And this week it's kind of like, oh, man, it was recruiting day. Back in the day, we did our whole show around it when it was the only day they could add players.
Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks to everyone who joined us on the show today, and thanks to all of you for listening. Let's do it again tomorrow. It's ESPN 700 and 92 on FM.